Chapter 41. End of Semester Evaluation 5. You are listening at novelfull.audio. End of Semester Evaluation 5. The two daughters of the Astrian family took different paths. The eldest daughter followed in her father's footsteps, the sword saint, Gerald Astrian, and became a knight. On the other hand, the second daughter admired her mother, a genius wizard, Historia Astrian, and chose the path of a wizard. However, even though their paths diverged, Gerald Astrian's ironclad rule remained the same. Be the best wherever you are. It would be strange if they weren't the best, he reasoned. They had both inherited the talents of a swordsman and a wizard. As a result, the sisters were admitted into M.Riken Academy, the most prestigious academy on the continent. The eldest daughter had firmly held her top position in the knight department, and she had even passed the Imperial Knight's entrance exam. The second daughter entered the magic department as the second seat of the first years. She wasn't the top seat. She wasn't the best. But she knew she had the talent, so she nodded her head and said, "I'll just have to work hard," and devoted herself to magic training and study. She believed that the fruits of her blood, sweat, and tears would surely make her the top seat. And so, she tried hard. But no matter how hard she tried, the gap with the top seat showed no signs of being closed. In a flower garden full of blue roses, Luz and Kaya stared at the scoreboard for a while. It was a situation where the existence they both cherished had overtaken the top students and achieved first place. Kaya's eyes lit up as she exclaimed, as expected of Sir Isaac, while Luz's mouth dropped open. Isaac, he got 5 fell cards and took first place at once. Seal Karndas, she dropped to second place after she had lost 5 fell cards. That didn't mean she was eliminated, however. If she had been eliminated, her name would have disappeared from the leaderboard. The implications were clear. Isaac and Seal Cardenas had worked together. Luz judged with a smile that was as faint as the moonlight in the middle of the night. She whispered softly, "Isaac, you had a plan." The two lowered their heads with a sense of satisfaction. But they had to return to reality. They had to fight the enemy in front of them. Phew. Thanks to Isaac, Kaya's spirit was lifted. She took a deep breath to calm herself down, and coldly glared at Luz. From now on, Kaya decided to only think about herself. Although she was momentarily excited about Isaac's situation, she couldn't get too worked up in front of such a formidable foe, as it would only exacerbate the difficulty of the fight. She calmly adjusted her posture to an appropriate level. "Luz Eltania, I've always wanted to fight you someday." Second place. Ever since she came to M.Riken Academy, Kaya had never left her position as the second seat. She wanted to catch up with the top seat. The gap between them ate away at Kaya's self-esteem like a rat in a cupboard, which only served to fuel her inferiority complex. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't get any closer to her, only further away. She felt as if she were swimming in an endless sea. Kaya lowered her eyes and spoke with deep sincerity, "From the very beginning, I was determined to surpass you, the top seat, as the second seat." Others praised her for being the second seat, but the only thing that caught Kaya's gaze was the back of Luz's head. "I will surpass you. That's why I've been working so hard. So, this fight is for me." Kaya's resolute voice dissipated powerlessly the moment she saw Luz's confused expression at her words. Luz calmly tilted her head, as if she had heard her voice for the very first time. An ominous thought flashed through Kaya's mind. Luz's following indifferent response, which seemed to indicate that she wasn't interested, had swallowed Kaya whole. "I didn't know you were the second seat." The top seat, Luz Eltania, was an existence Kaya Astrian, the second seat, wanted to catch up with. The existence that had always stood firm in front of her, and guarded her place. Kaya had been running diligently, while keeping the back of the top seat in her sight. For Luz, the top seat, the second seat or whatever was of little interest. Even during the mana evaluation, she didn't listen to Professor Fernando's announcement of mana capacity rankings. She had never even glanced at the report cards posted in Orphan Hall. She knew she would be the strongest and get the highest grades anyway. It didn't matter one bit. Even now, all Luz wanted to do was defeat Kaya and go see Isaac. Kaya gripped her wand tightly and channeled her mana, her mouth tightly clenched. The blue rose garden was drenched as if a sudden shower had poured down. The majestic glow of the setting sun seemed to have faded. Her throat was parched as she quietly sat in the flower bed and admired the view. Her dark green hair and uniform, both thoroughly soaked, refused to dry. In reality, only a short amount of time had passed. However, for Kaya, who was sitting by the blue rose garden, it felt like an eternity. She lost. Kaya's wind magic was far too weak to push away Luz's heavy water magic. After exchanging several blows, Luz left indifferently. She believed Kaya was unable to fight and walked away as if she had just stepped on a bug. Kaya couldn't even stand up as her legs gave out. She could only blankly stare at the distant sky. It seemed that she had narrowly avoided elimination. If she had been eliminated, a signal would have appeared on her bracelet, and an exam proctor would have come to escort her away by now. It felt as if her ribs were broken. She felt a tingling sensation in her intestines, as if something had ruptured. Kaya wiped the edges of her eyes with her wet collar. She was glad that Luz was a water element user. I have to hurry up and pass the end of semester evaluation so that I can prepare for the Thunderbird subjugation. Seal and I made our way to the submission location where I needed to go. Seal walked at a jaunty pace while she cradled the pillow I had given her with both arms. I would have preferred to run, but running was like rat poison to her, so I had to be grateful for her quick steps. Maybe it was because I was now ranked first, but the number of students who attacked me had increased compared to before. All of them were easily knocked out with one shot of Seal's magic, however. Clearly, since the Class D kid took first place, there will be many envious people who can't stand that thought, hurriedly rushing in without knowing any better. All of them were dangerous opponents to me, but in front of Seal, they were just another punching bag. Stop. Flame pillar, fire element, 4, wayward. Suddenly, a pillar of flame menacingly rose in front of us. I would have been charred black if Seal hadn't reached out her arm to stop me. The pillar of fire quickly disintegrated into powder, which scattered into red light and disappeared. It seemed to be a spell to stop us in our tracks, rather than to harm us. Seal's eyes followed the source of the spell. I also turned my head in the direction of Seal's gaze. It was a time when the sky was slowly taking on a vivid sunset color. On the roof of a nearby tall abandoned building, a female student was perilously perched on the railing with her eyes peering in our direction. Her short pink hair that fell slightly below her shoulders was fluttering in the wind. Under her school uniform skirt was the fair skin of her smooth, long legs, revealing delicate curves. In front of her outstretched right hand, was a bright red magic circle, ready to shoot magic at any moment. She was Caridna White-Clark, one of the top honor students of Class A. Caridna White-Clark, LV. Race. Human elements. Fire, wind danger. Low psychology. Hoping to kill your spirit by denouncing you. Caridna White-Clark had a very high, elemental efficiency, and the higher the elemental efficiency, the less mana it took to cast a single spell. It also increased the range of magic and the success rate of joint attacks. None of the magic department's first years could contend with her in terms of elemental efficiency. As a result, Caridna was one of the most feared opponents in battle, as she could create more variables than anyone else among the first-year students. Caridna had a menacing smile on her face. It was like a villain saying, "You're done now," and with a wicked smile on her face, she began to speak. But it was inaudible. It sounded like she was shouting at the top of her lungs, but it kept getting drowned out by the evening wind. "Can you hear what she is saying?" I asked Seal and she shook her head. Charidna passionately shouted something as she made flashy gestures, like she was performing in a play. I suppose it would be polite to respond, but no matter how hard I strained my ears, I couldn't understand what she had actually said. I'm sorry, but I don't want to pointlessly waste my time. As I thought that, Seal and I turned our heads and started to walk away. Charidna White-Clark began to shout frantically with a bewildered look on her face. I, of course, had a hard time hearing what she was talking about. And at that moment, whirlwind, wind element, 4, a menacing whirlwind raged overhead. After I had sensed it, I quickly stepped forward and threw my body to the side, embracing Seal. Whoosh! As the whirlwind struck the ground, a fierce wind spread in all directions. I rolled on the floor as I hugged the small dot-sized Seal. Are you okay? Seal glared at me with her half-open eyes, hugging her pillow tightly. Move. She replied sharply, as if annoyed, but her expression remained unchanged. She acted as if she were unaffected by the earlier attack. I helped Seal to her feet, and we stood up together. Then, a vain blonde aristocrat caught my eye. He gazed down at us from the roof of a nearby shed, a smug smile on his face. Tristan Humphrey, LV. Race. Human elements. Wind danger. Low psychology. Wants to humiliate and eliminate you. Ha. So that's how it is for a grade.E commoner. Were you begging a class.A student? You can't live without leeching off others. How ridiculous. Tristan Humphrey laughed loudly, ha 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 ha, then coughed to clear his throat. However, I had no time to worry about him. I quickly tried to move forward with Seal. Soon after, the earth shook, and another bolt of magic slammed into me and Seal. Rock wall, rock element, 4, a solid rock wall powerfully erupted from the ground to entrap Seal and I. The rock walls reached high into the sky. It was a thick wall that exuded powerful mana. Seal. I know. I interlocked my fingers and began to condense ice mana through the gap in between my hands, and at the same time, Seal materialized 3 blue magic circles towards the rock wall. Frost explosion, ice element, 5, hydro cannon, water element, 5, qua. Boom, 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 boom. My frost explosion caused a crack in the rock wall while Seal's magic circle shot out water with the power of a cannonball. Quadadadadang. The rock wall collapsed. Shards of rock and ice scattered into the air, and at the same time, a wind of moisture-laden dust blew in, and in it, Seal and I assumed our battle stances. Eventually, the dust settled. The landscape reflected in my eyes was a bleak situation. Not only Tristan, but a group of about a dozen students, who I assumed to be Tristan's subordinates, surrounded us. In addition to that, there were twin female students who came out of nowhere, a long-haired male student who was giggling with a sinister aura, and even a magic prodigy with a tiny physique. All of them were top students in Class B. Even Charidna White-Clark, a Class A student, who was muttering something on the roof, glared at us like a predator would at its prey. And then, I like combat. In the dust that slowly settled, a husky female voice came from the front. The owner of that voice had a wooden bat studded with topaz-colored magic stones slung over one of her shoulders. Seal could handle Charidna White-Clark. However, if that woman was added to the mix, our chances of winning would really disappear. The dust had completely settled now. The image of that woman stood in our way. I could clearly see her in my field of vision. So I've been waiting for this battlefield to ripen, and then I was planning to smash everything to pieces, said the orange-haired pretty girl holding the wooden bat. She wore a school uniform with tight-fitting pants that accentuated her wide hips and legs. Her free hand was in her pocket, and her insolent attitude made her look like a delinquent. Her hair was pulled back into a ponytail. Her white shirt was unbuttoned, which revealed her smooth abs and the black bra-like tank top she wore underneath. I wanted to finish it before it got to this point. I bit my lip. The situation had shaped up to be the worst-case scenario. In the original Magic Night of M. Raken scenario without Luce's rampage, if I had to choose the most dangerous person in the end of semester evaluation, it would undoubtedly be the orange-haired female student that stood in front of me. She took her time during the first part of the exam, and leisurely enjoyed the meat and drinks she had prepared ahead of time. Then she joined the battle during the second half of the end semester evaluation. The difficulty level, which had already increased due to Seal's intrusion in the mid to late half, skyrocketed to an insane level. This was because that orange-haired woman had randomly eliminated students. The reason was simple. Combat is fun. What's up with you? Isn't it getting really fun now? Ah! The orange-haired girl exclaimed as she let out a giggle. She was Lisetta Lionheart, a class A delinquent. She had established herself as the final barrier. Lisetta Lionheart, LV. Race. Human elements. Rock danger. Low psychology. Wonders what your identity is. As a member of a renowned family of knights, House Lionheart, she had been educated with an emphasis on etiquette and dignity. However, after she entered the academy, she broke free from her family's suffocating traditions and began to live life according to her own personality. In short, she became a reckless girl. Lisetta Lionheart. Cold sweat trickled down my cheeks. Coridna White-Clark and Lisetta Lionheart from Class A, as well as the top students of Class B such as Tristan Humphrey and his around a dozen subordinates, and a slew of other Class B students, had all targeted us at the same time. These people probably didn't even consider the possibility that their actions right now could lead to the end of the world. Even if you take us down, everyone here will be your enemy, so what's the point? My desire. To destroy everyone and everything. Come on, cut us some slack. This is so unfair. I don't take orders from those weaker than me. If you want to make me submit, prove you're stronger than me, fool. I tried testing Lisetta Lionheart, not expecting anything, and her reaction was as predicted. Was she intentionally doing that? If you dominate me, I'll do whatever you ask of me. Whether that be stripping off my clothes and dancing on top of you, telling me to be your lover, or fulfilling your obscene fantasies at night. I'll do anything. The male students around her started to blush. Her provocative words and actions seemed to set their hearts ablaze, which stirred their manhood. Lisetta's ideal type was clear-cut. A male peer who was stronger than her. If she met such a man, she was prepared to give her heart and body. In fact, it was as if she was talking about her true desire. In the first place, Seal Karndas, I don't think you're the type to team up with anyone. Lisetta said, her golden eyes fixed on Seal. What the hell is that man doing to help you? Seal took a step in front of me, and hugged the pillow I'd given her tightly. She extended her right arm towards Lisetta, an orange magic circle materialized in front of her right hand. You are noisy. Fight me or shut up. Seal's intention to fight silenced the air. Lisetta smirked, and lowered the wooden bat slung over her shoulder. She tightly grasped the handle with both her hands. It was no ordinary bat but a magic tool modified to increase the power of rock magic. Just like Kaya's wand, it was a weapon exclusively for Lisetta. Yes, that reaction. I like it, Seal Karndas. Lisetta shouted with a thirst to fight, her eyes widened to cover an even larger area of her whites. She was like a gladiator who let her lust for battle spill out like a volcanic eruption. Tristan Humphrey, his subordinates, and the top students of Class B also deployed magic circles and prepared themselves for battle. The same was true of Coridna White-Clark, who had aimed at us from the building's roof earlier. There were only students stronger than me, but I couldn't stay still. I moved to stand next to Seal, hoping to help even just a little bit. But she held out her arm to stop me. Don't get in the way. I don't think you're going to help us at all, seeing how you used such crude magic to break the rock wall earlier. Crude magic. If you had taken a hit from my frost explosion, you wouldn't be saying that. To be honest, I'm still not convinced. Are you acting weak in order to get out of this situation? Or are you some kind of freak with exceptional mana perception? Surprisingly, neither answer was correct. It's true that I am weak, and my mana perception is at a terrible level, even worse than yours. Isaac's body is just originally like that. Whatever I do, it's my decision. Anyway, you're not trying to run away, but you're trying to protect me in accordance with our deal. What good am I if I can't help you? You're an idiot. An idiot, what? Let's try to write a 3-line acrostic poem with, I accidentally said that out loud, and quickly tried fixing my mistake. Seal glared at me. Nonetheless, it was a relief that there was no time to attack me because the situation was desperate. Although it was a little irritating not to rhyme with ba. T/N, idiot, which is what she called him at first. So, they would use each character from that word, for the poem, where is ba here? Either way, I have no choice but to fight. To protect myself from those who are aiming at me, and to survive, I must fight my way through them. To be honest, I'm terrified of failing. Even for Seal, taking them down is too much, and I'm still weak. But with a deep breath, I gathered my emotions and shook off my fears. There was no point in being scared. I steeled myself and remembered all the battles I'd fought so far. I took an old dagger from inside my school uniform and drew it from its scabbard. In my right hand I held the sheath of disaster, and in my left hand I held a normal blade. It was no different from usual. I would leap over obstacles and slay the demons. What the hell? I was determined to be brave, but somehow the atmosphere was strange. Lysetta's face, which had been so fiery just a moment ago, was now filled with wariness. Caridna, who watched us from the top of the building, was troubled. Even Tristan, his men, and the Class B honor students were tense. None of their gazes lingered on me or Seal. Isaac. A voice as soft as moonlight came from behind me, and as soon as I heard it, I understood the whole situation. Seal and I turned around, and our gazes were drawn to a graceful female student who stood a decent distance from us. Her rose-gold hair, as well as the morpho butterfly dot-colored braids that hung down the sides of her head, reflected the sunset light. Her face, which usually gave me a gentle smile, was cast in a deep shadow due to the backlight. The female student with rose-gold hair swallowed a gasp. Her eyes widened as if in shock. I could feel her blue oceanic eyes scanning me in detail. Only then did I realize that my outward appearance was in disarray. I must have appeared to have come here after tumbling around hard somewhere. It was all Seal's fault. The powerful mana flowing from Luce seemed to weigh heavily on the air. The intense, murderous aura that emanated from her was enough to send chills down my spine. Who made you so? An icy cold voice cut through the air. Then, Seal, who stood next to me, pointed in the direction of Lysetta with a brazen face. It was surprisingly audacious. Soon, Luce's cold and cynical gaze pierced through Seal and drove a wedge into the enemies behind her. It was an unexpected turn of events, even for me. Footnotes. Chapter 42. End of Semester Evaluation, 6, you are listening at novelfull.audio. End of Semester Evaluation, 6, to Luce Eltania, others were like a hedgehog whose entire body was covered with sharp quills. If she got too close, the quills would prick and sting. The candy house the witch in the candy house, from Hansel and Gretel. Some may also refer to candy house as gingerbread house. Was dead. The one who had taken in Luce, who had been abandoned by her parents and had nowhere else to go. Someone who meant so much to Luce had died right in front of her in a futile manner. Candy House Witch, you sacrificed your life for the people you wanted to protect, and were recorded in history as the infamous Great Witch of Heaven's Wrath, a name still cursed by people to this very day. History wasn't just a relic of the past. It was also a work of art that was molded by the hands of the people who lived in the present. As such, the ending was too grueling for Luce to endure, and a deep sense of distrust washed over her. A deep-seated disgust and hatred for humans had taken root and sprouted. It happened when she was only 10 years old. Luce had forgotten everything she had seen that day, but she vividly remembered the pain of that time whenever someone spoke to her. So, she lived like a mute, and avoided others. Eventually, she developed a knack for hiding memories she didn't want to recall deep inside her mind. However, the painful memories lingered like an echo, and anyone's approach still felt like a needle was piercing her heart. And then, for the first time, she made a friend. It was very unusual for Luce, who normally felt disgusted and hateful whenever someone spoke to her. They ate alone together, they exchanged small talk and silly jokes, and even studied together. She taught him things he struggled with, helped him train, encouraged him, and they hadn't even been friends for a month, yet the time she spent with him gave Luce a sense of fulfillment that couldn't be compared to any she had experienced prior. He was the only person she didn't hate. After she had witnessed the Candy House Witch's death at the age of 10, Luce had closed herself off from others. But to her, this friend felt like an incredibly precious existence. He felt like the sunrise that illuminated the darkness of dawn. And unlike everyone else, this friend made her feel neither disgust nor hatred. Under the sky tinged with the color of sunset, Luce's eyes caught a glimpse of Isaac. A scorched school uniform that held traces of fire magic. In addition, he was covered with dust and dirt, it was as if he had rolled around somewhere. Through the tears in his uniform, blood stains were visible. She wondered who was responsible for such injuries. His rolled-up sleeve revealed the large bruises on his forearm. She was curious as to who had beaten him so severely. Even a single droplet on the surface of a calm body of water could create circular ripples that spread out several times over. The appearance of Isaac, on the other hand, was like dropping a boulder into calm waters. This caused a turbulent flow within Luce's heart. Luce. It's a pleasant sound. That's why it hurts me so much when you call my name. Right now, she knew that this situation was part of an exam. It was only natural to get hurt. Luce understood that in her head. However, no matter how much she believed that, if Isaac was being targeted by dozens of enemies, and they were all trying to hurt him. Luce felt overwhelmed by a sense of helplessness as her anger soared and became unbearable. Pwah! In an instant, her water mana converted into the water element and scattered a clear blue light that swirled overhead. It was grand enough to encompass the whole area. Her mana control was so excellent that not even a single droplet of water splashed around her. This meant that she could use even a single droplet of water to attack. At the same time, 5 blue magic circles about 2 m in diameter materialized around her, each with a 5-star rating or higher. They were all ready to activate, so she could unleash their spells all at once. The enemies that had targeted Isaac and Seal all swallowed their saliva and became wary of Luce. They were in no position to act hastily. Everyone here was within the range of Luce's magic. She was in a position where she could eliminate anyone at any time. Run away. We will never win against the top seat. If you run away, I will kill you. Tristan hurriedly ordered his men to flee, but Lysetta's murderous voice cut him off. I can't stand it when a coward tries to flee before even fighting. Shouldn't you at least cut something if you've drawn your sword? Tristan and his men stared at Lysetta with terrified faces. Besides, if I steal the fell cards, you'll all be my enemies. Wouldn't it be more fun for me if there were more of you to fight against, huh? Something was off about Lysetta. At least Tristan thought so. Lysetta glared at the top seat with a smirk. From the start, she had no intention of passing this test quickly. She was just excited about the prospect of how many enemies she could fight if she got the fell cards in such a chaotic situation. In such a chaotic situation, for someone who loved intense battles like her, there was no way she could not be excited. Her entire body shuddered. The always stoic top seat was enraged. She couldn't believe she was getting nervous. Lisetta giggled and gripped the bat tightly with both hands. Soon, a light brown magic circle materialized in front of her. The person who sat on the roof, Coridna Whiteclark, also had no intention of running away. She was simply annoyed with the top seat. Ever since she joined Class A, Coridna had been kind to her Class A classmates. It was clear that they were different from the rest of the students, and she intended to use them as potential connections to solidify her social foundation. However, Luce had never even acknowledged Coridna's greetings. Luce Eltania always had her brow furrowed and looked at Coridna as if she were looking at garbage. Luce never said anything to her, she only expressed her displeasure. She couldn't argue with the top seat, but now she had the opportunity to unleash her rage on that arrogant face. Although her mind was confused for a moment by the top seat's sudden appearance, she was composed now. Coridna broke out into a cold sweat and with a forced smile, she unleashed her light red magic circle. Isaac. Luce turned her gaze towards Isaac. A gentle smile hung over her face, it was a gentle smile that didn't match the eerie swirls and magic circles that formed overhead in the slightest. Go quickly. So that Isaac could pass the exam and be safe, Luce was going to help him escape. Thank you, Luce. After he judged the situation, Isaac simply nodded his head and began running in the direction of Lisetta. That grade E commoner. Soon after Tristan had shouted, a light green whirlwind was sent towards Isaac. The moment Luce tried to protect Isaac with a water barrier, water wall. Firestorm, fire element, 5, plus whirlwind, wind element, 4, equals fire dragon, fire plus wind element, roar. The raging whirlwind turned away from Isaac and began to soar through the air like an oriental dragon while wrapped in flames. Coridna's firestorm was directed at Tristan's whirlwind, which resulted in a synergized attack. It wasn't a predetermined plan, but Coridna had anticipated what Tristan would do and used her fire magic to synergize with it. Obviously, it was not an easy feat to accomplish. Coridna waved the wand she held like a baton. The whirlwind that was spiraled in flames roamed the skies at her command. At each passing moment, the flames became even more magnificent as it ate away at Coridna's mana. Then, Lisetta shouted. Gah! Rock avalanche, rock element, 4, d. Coo. Lisetta swung her bat sideways at the magic circle, triggering the magic and causing boulders of topaz to ferociously blaze through the air. The magical blunt weapon, rock bat. The bat, which increased the power of rock magic, increased the power of rock avalanche dramatically. It was a weapon that made the use of mana more difficult, but that wasn't a problem for Lisetta, who had practiced with rock bat for many years. The magic boulder, densely packed with rock mana, headed straight towards Isaac. Isaac already held the dagger and the sheath of disaster with his index and middle fingers, while his remaining fingers were interlocked to condense ice mana. He was willing to use the sheath of disaster to unleash 2 consecutive, frost explosion, in order to counter Lisetta's magic. Roar! At that moment, Coridna swung her wand downwards, and as a result, the fire dragon, that had grown to an impossibly large size plummeted towards Isaac, Luce, and Seal. A long whirlwind with torrents of spiraled flames threatened to engulf them. Tristan's men and the Class B top students also launched counterattacks with various elemental spells. Water flow barrier, water element, 6, then, a clear blue shield of water formed around Isaac like the blue sky. It was a shield that nullified Luce's water magic. At the same time, a magnificent blue magic circle instantly materialized on the ground. Afterwards, a humpback whale leaped out from the magic circle. Flying whale, water element, 6, Poo. Kawa.aa. The giant whale devoured all of the enemy's magic. More accurately, it was a terrifyingly fierce spectacle of condensed tidal current that took the form of a whale. It surged with overwhelming force. If they were swept into the whale's body, they would be crushed by the intense water pressure and hurled around inside the whale's body at breakneck speed. Flying whale was triggered under Isaac's feet. Thanks to water flow barrier, he was shielded from Luce's attack. It was a magic that negated the caster's own magic. The water-made whale destroyed half of the building that came into contact with its body. The wreckage of the building was swept away by the whale's torrent. The building Tristan and his men took shelter in collapsed. The water-made whale seemed to have swallowed them whole and even drowned out their screams. Soon after, flying whale and fire dragon clashed. However, the fire dragon was uselessly devoured by the whale's body, only to explode into a burst of hot steam. Lycetta's rock avalanche was swept away by the torrent and swirled around inside the whale's body. It was not much different from the fate of the half-destroyed buildings. Truly overwhelming. In front of Luce, the first-year student's magic was meaningless. It's scary, really. Isaac unleashed the spell for Frost Explosion, in admiration and continued to run. The moment, flying whale, turned into blue powder and dispersed, Isaac caught sight of Lycetta, who had deployed a magic circle aimed right at him. I won't miss. With her bat raised, Lycetta smashed the magic circle. Rockfall, rock element, for Isaac noticed that a shadow had been cast all around him. When he lifted his head, he saw a large topaz-colored rock menacingly fall from the sky. It appeared to be from a light brown magic circle that was carved into the sky above. Seal and Luce tried to block the attack by deploying a water wall, when suddenly, an unexpected gust of wind came crashing down onto the rockfall. Whirlwind, wind element, for a light green whirlwind of great power, incomparable to that of Tristan's magic, sliced through the air. It swallowed the rockfall that was headed towards Isaac in an instant. That whirlwind boasted a high enough mana density to blow Lycetta's rockfall away. Wind generation, wind element, 1, an unnatural wind began to flow around the area. The wind gained momentum in a matter of seconds as it ferociously ruffled the hair and uniforms of the nearby students. And then, a girl descended from the sky, her light green pigtails fluttering around. She landed lightly on the ground, with wind at her feet. Kaya Astrian stepped in between Isaac and Lycetta. Kaya. Asterisk. Kaya Astrian, LV. Race. Human elements. Wind, ice danger. Psychology. Wants to help you. The moment I saw Kaya's back, I couldn't help but stop in my tracks. It was because I could see her clutch her rib cage in pain. Ha 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 ha, even the second seat is participating. Who the hell is this extra that you bitches are making such a fuss over, on? Lycetta excitedly shouted as she looked from the top seat to the second and third. Her voice, however, did not seem to have reached Kaya. Go ahead, Sir Isaac. I don't know what you have in mind this time, but I will always be on your side no matter what. Kaya's low voice had a faint tremor, as if she had just been crying. It bothered me, but now wasn't the time to think about it. Time was running out. I thanked her and started to run towards the submission location once again. And then. You. Luce Eltania. Kaya furiously shouted at the top of her lungs. It was the rose-gold-haired top seat who reacted to her. Kaya's gaze snapped towards Luce. An angry side profile caught my eye. Luce had an apathetic expression on her face as she looked at Kaya. She appeared to have judged that because Kaya protected me, she was not an enemy. Kaya Astrian, psychology. Feels a strong inferiority complex to Luz Eltania. If there was someone who could put Kaya in such a state, the only person who came to mind was Luz. She appeared to have narrowly avoided elimination, but her battle with Luz seemed to have stimulated something deep inside of her. Lisetta and Caridna were stunned, as this was the first time they had ever seen the diligent Kaya raise her voice. Kaya Astrian. My name is Kaya Astrian. I am the one who has been chasing you to the brink of death. I've always been right behind you. But you don't even remember me. Kaya's sincerity echoed throughout her tearful voice. I hate you. The hand holding her wand started to tremble. The inferiority complex she'd been harboring towards the top seat had been building up and finally erupted. Kaya was clearly shaken by her fight with Luz. That inferiority complex of hers wouldn't get any better in the future. The gap between Luz and Kaya would widen over time. The only thing that awaited Kaya was a deep sense of self-doubt. I can't help but think that I can only receive this kind of treatment from you, and it makes me feel pathetic. That I'm so weak in your eyes. Ice wall, ice element, for I created a wall of ice around Kaya, so that the other students wouldn't see her cry. By the time I regained my senses, my feet had already moved towards Kaya. I pulled Kaya into a hug from behind and took out a wand from the magic pouch in my arms, softly placing it in her hand. A wand made of Armana, an 8-star colossal tree that guarded the great forest. It was the only wand that synergized with plant mana, and it was Kaya's final weapon that would boost her abilities to new heights. This is my gift, from me to you. I thought I told you before. Besides her tears, Kaya's tremors had ceased, as if time had stood still. Over the course of my countless playthroughs of Magic Knight of M.Reken, I had grown attached to the characters. Kaya Astrian, in particular, was one of the official heroines. It goes without saying that I had a lot of affection for her. Maybe that was why, the sight of Kaya's tears made me feel sick to my stomach. I couldn't help but reach out to her. Your true worth will be shown in the future. Sir Isaac. Kaya had previously mistaken me for a super strong person. She even admired me. In reality, I was just a weak man, but my current false self held tremendous influence over Kaya. I wanted to use that to give her the best comfort I could offer. I hoped she would be able to draw strength from it. So I whispered in her ear in a calm voice. Don't forget. You're someone I recognize. With those words, I pulled away from Kaya, released the ice wall, and started to run again. The students looked back and forth between Kaya and I with confused expressions. They seemed to be curious about what kind of short conversation had taken place inside the ice wall. It was Kaya who was the most flustered. Her tears had long since dried up, and her eyes were fixed on the Armana wand I had given her. Soon, Kaya's face was flushed red, and steam began to rise from her head. I had momentarily forgotten that Kaya was weak to men. Running away again, you coward. Lisetta's boulder tried to fly towards me once more. Wind sword, wind element, 3, Kaya's wind, now stronger than ever, shot out dozens of meters like a sharp sword, easily slicing through Lisetta's boulder. Lisetta's pupils dilated. It was a boulder that had been imbued with the power of rock bat. The sight of such magic being easily destroyed by wind magic shocked Lisetta to her core. Kaya herself appeared to be surprised, and rightfully so. The mere act of holding the wand of Armana had greatly boosted her elemental magic and combat power. With this, my debt to you is settled, Kaya. I turned my back on the battlefield, where all kinds of elemental magic and screams rang out, and ran towards the submission location. The time for the Thunderbird subjugation was nearly upon us. Footnotes. Chapter 43. Thunderbird Subjugation, 1, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Thunderbird Subjugation, 1, Isaac was a bit of a celebrity within the magic department. In a bad way, of course. He was in Class D with grade E mana. In the class placement evaluation, he took last place with a score that would have been difficult to achieve even if he deliberately tried, and he was ranked at the bottom among the first years of the magic department. He was, without a doubt, the weakest student of the magic department. But now, things were different. If you stopped any student and asked them if Isaac was the weakest first year, they would shake their heads. During the dual evaluation, he used 5-star magic, albeit at a low level. Among the first-year students of the magic department, there were only a handful of students who could use 5-star magic. Isaac, who was thought to be the weakest, had done it. It was an incredible growth rate. Even so, it didn't prove that Isaac was special. If anything, Ian Fairytale, who was also evaluated as having grade E mana during the mana evaluation, was special. His growth rate was much faster, and he even had a constitution that allowed him to use the light element. In addition, some students were already at a level where they could use 5-star magic at a high level. This naturally overshadowed the fruits of Isaac's hard work, as people's attention was drawn to those who were more impressive. However, that man. Not only was he involved with the top seat and Senior Dorothy, but also the second and third seats. Eva Hylov couldn't believe her eyes. She was watching a large-scale battle while she secretly hid behind a tree in stealth mode. From the looks of it, it seemed that Luz Eltania was very upset over Isaac's injury. During the battle, even Kaya Astrian, the second seat, joined in and took Isaac's side. And to Eva's surprise, even Seal Cardenas, who had helped Isaac find his fell cards, was on Isaac's side. Isaac, who the hell are you? Eva wondered in fear. The thought that all the strongest students of the magic department were favoring Isaac was terrifying. What kind of fearsome man was he? Kayak. Suddenly, Luz's water magic sliced through the trees around Eva. It was something that had been misfired in the middle of the large battle. Eva trembled, covering her head with both hands, like when someone was caught in a crossfire between two sides. Asterisk. Isaac. Pass. The submission location was a small passageway whose entrance was adjacent to the barrier for the exam. I was greeted by a young female professor in charge of Class C who was on standby there. I handed the 5 fell cards to the female professor as I caught my breath. She checked them all, nodded, and unlocked my bracelet. When she inserted something that looked like a key into it, it clicked and unlocked. I didn't expect you to beat out all those Class A students and get first place. Ho, you must have had some tricks up your sleeve. You seem like a guy who's good at taking the easy way out. I had already anticipated that I would be doubted over how someone like me could come in first place, and I had already thought about it a lot. But the female professor's meek attitude still made me discouraged. If you walk out of here and go straight ahead, you'll see a carriage. If you ride it, you can go back to your dormitory. Great job. Thank you. I lowered my head and bowed, then walked out of the passage. My suffering doesn't end here. I was barely at the starting line. The sun was still shining in the sky. As soon as the setting sun disappeared over the horizon, the Thunderbird is a legendary creature, in particular, North American indigenous peoples' history and culture. It is considered a supernatural being of power and strength. Would be summoned. Until then, I have to go around the outskirts, just outside the boundary of the end of semester evaluation. I headed towards the building called Carley Hall, which sat high on a hill. I took off at full speed, using the calf muscles I had worked so hard on. Magic Night of M. Reken. Act 3, Chapter 4, Thunderbird Subjugation. Just as the sun was setting, Vera the summoner rode on her familiar and flew towards the exam location like a speeding bullet. As soon as the demon appeared, she immediately stole Thunderbird Galia from Luz, which caused her to lose all of her mana and faint. Afterwards, Vera stormed into the exam location to kill the main character, Ian Fairytale. Because of this, the Academy was forced to declare a state of emergency. Subsequently, the old M.Reken Academy was surrounded by the barrier of the mighty Thunderbird. As a result, the Academy's administration was unable to help. Anyone who approached would be electrocuted by the high voltage current, and it would be difficult to break through the barrier. Meanwhile, Vera the Summoner decided to go to Carly Hall with Thunderbird Galia and Luce in order to observe the situation. The inside of the Thunderbird's barrier was infested with the Thunderbird's minions called Lightning Harpies. These mobs would give EXP when you defeated them. Luce's unconscious body was protected by the Thunderbird's lightning shield, which made her the safest person in the Thunderbird subjugation. Confused by the unexpected disaster, the exam proctors, professors, and the students with strength remaining tried to locate the rest of the students and carry out a rescue operation. This process was carried out quickly and without any casualties. The bracelets worn on the students' wrists made it easy to locate them, and the lightning harpies were no match for the exam proctors and professors. By the way, those who passed the test before the appearance of the Thunderbird were safe, since the Thunderbird's barrier was only set up to the entrance of the exam site. Even if you had stayed at the entrance, you wouldn't have to worry, since the professors would evacuate you to a safe place immediately. Ultimately, the story of Act 3 Scene 4 was about the remaining students, professors, and exam proctors joining forces to defeat Vera and the Thunderbird. The leaders would inevitably be Ian and Dorothy, who are the only ones who could deliver an effective blow to the Thunderbird. So, what I need to do is, go to Carly Hall in advance and hide, and wait for the optimal time to kill Vera the Summoner. There were two important points in this mission. First, that I shouldn't kill Vera the Summoner in advance. The Thunderbird was consumed by destructive instincts due to the curse of the 8-star magic beast, Evil Dragon Orcus. Because of that, they couldn't control themselves, and Luce had to pour out her lightning mana every second to suppress the Thunderbird. Vera's domination magic, on the other hand, could even consume the curse of the evil dragon to gain complete control. As a result, if Vera was defeated, the Thunderbird would return to normal. It was also important to note that Luce regained her original powers, which was crucial for future scenarios. Second, Vera must be alone. Just as the Thunderbird subjugation party was slaying the lightning harpies and about to reach Carly Hall, the Thunderbird stops them. This meant Vera would be by herself. That's when I come into play. This was Plan A, the most likely way for our SSS-class Master Fainter protagonist to not die. There was no need to worry about anyone dying in the process of defeating the lightning harpies as long as Dorothy was there. The problem was Thunderbird Galia. As the subjugation party dealt with the Thunderbird, it would unleash the 7-star lightning spell, Thunderstorm Annihilation, when its HP dropped to 20%. It was a spell that poured out massive amounts of lightning, insta-killing anyone who wasn't Dorothy. In order to stop Thunderstorm Annihilation, all the purple magic stones on the Thunderbird's body must be struck by a single light elemental sword, which was easier said than done. That was why I have repeatedly stated that the Thunderbird subjugation was extremely difficult. In other words, there was no way the protagonist would be able to stop Thunderstorm Annihilation. Therefore, it would be safer for me to participate in the Thunderbird subjugation battle, even at the risk of my identity being revealed. Plan A, which was to quickly take down Vera the Summoner before Galia's HP dropped to 20%, was the safest way. Both for preventing bad endings and for the future. As a secondary note, defeating familiars wouldn't give experience points. However, if I killed Vera, the subjugation party that fought against Thunderbird Galia would be treated as if they had fought Vera and would receive cooperative experience points. Ian, in particular, must be as powerful as he needs to be to progress the story. Let's hope he gains good party EXP. Gasp, 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 gasp. My breathing became heavy, but I couldn't stop. Because the sky was slowly darkening. ******, the outcome of the end of semester evaluation battle was obvious from the start. With the top, second, and third seats of the magic department on the same team, no one at the exam site stood a chance against them. When the dust settled, only Luce, Kaya, and Seal were left standing amidst the fierce battlefield. Their enemies had all been knocked out, left sprawled on the ground as the exam proctors gradually gathered them with stretchers. Sir Isaac, the wand in Kaya's hand was the one Isaac had given her earlier. Its body, made of beautiful grayish-brown wood, was studded with magic stones that gave off a brilliant rust color. The wand's mana sensitivity was far different from her usual wand. It felt as if clogged mana circuits had been unblocked, which allowed her to channel even more mana. Your share. Luce quietly approached Kaya and handed her 2 fell cards. Given that they had taken all the students' fell cards in the large scale battle, they must have some leftovers. As she received the cards, Kaya's mind was filled with a slew of emotions. The anguish and humiliation she'd felt earlier when she realized she was nothing to Luce, as well as the thrill and relief she'd felt when she heard Isaac's whispers, were all entangled in a complex web of thoughts. But Kaya shook her head and pushed aside all these musings. She had lost, and Luce had won, it was as simple as that. Whether the winner remembered the loser or not was up to her own discretion. Moreover, she was someone who was acknowledged by Sir Isaac. There was no reason for her to feel down. Thank you, Luce Eltania. Kaya flashed a gentle smile and took the cards from Luce. Luce narrowed her eyes. She claimed she was the second seat. Even when she ran into the spell in the Blue Rose Garden, and when she first appeared here, she had an expression full of anger, but now she looked strangely relaxed. What did she and Isaac talk about in that brief moment inside of the ice wall that caused her attitude to change so suddenly? Luce's eyes turned to Kaya's hand. Kaya's wand had changed, she had noticed it a while ago. It had to be a gift from Isaac. Was she also Isaac's friend? At that moment, Luce realized something she had overlooked. For her, Isaac was her first friend. But she couldn't have been Isaac's first friend. He must have built up countless human relationships. It wouldn't be surprising if the girl with the light green twin tails in front of her was one of them. She felt her heart ache. It was a fact that subtly irritated her. She was already dissatisfied with the amount of time she spent with Isaac, and if he had many friends as well. Wouldn't the already insufficient amount of time become even more scarce? As Luce came to such a conclusion, she began to feel a deep repulsion towards Kaya. She knew it was her own selfishness and childish thinking, but she wanted to monopolize Isaac's time. He was her only friend. And being with him was really enjoyable. Tisk, Luce clicked her tongue as she handed Kaya the cards, then quickly turned around and left the scene. As Luce walked away, Kaya stared blankly at her back. Did she just get annoyed? Why? She honestly couldn't figure out what the top seat was thinking. It was then that the demon appeared with her back to the setting sun. Good morning, everyone. The gazes of the students and the test proctors immediately turned to the 3-meter-tall woman. The gray-skinned demon, Vera the Summoner. A creepy smile tugged at the corners of her lips. Asterisk asterisk asterisk, my whole body was drenched in sweat. The school uniform I was wearing felt heavy. However, I was able to run at full speed for quite a long time, perhaps thanks to the development of my stamina. Throughout the run, I kept an eye on the scoreboard in the sky. It was difficult to make an accurate judgment, but it seemed that about 13 people had passed the exam. This was all while the first, second, and third seats were in the midst of a fierce battle. My destination, Carley Hall, was located at the top of a high hill. The red palace-like exterior still exuded a beautiful grandeur, along with the traces of the passage of time. Along with Bardas Hall, it was a building that symbolized M.Riken Academy. A hill covered with colorful flowers appeared before my eyes. Without resting, I ran up the hill. But as I reached the middle of the hill while running, Kua! A deafening screech rang out. I stopped in my tracks and immediately turned my head back. The setting sun was disappearing beyond the horizon as twilight slowly crept down. Kaya wa. Karar. Clang. 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 The loud cry of a bird of prey. The screech of the thunderbird rang throughout heaven and earth, and thunder rose from all directions. Dozens of purple lightning bolts streaked across the sky, each carving its own shape into the ultramarine blue sky. In an instant, dark clouds covered the sky. From a location where you could capture the panoramic view of the old M.Riken Academy with a single glance, a black thunderbird entwined with purple lightning and darkness mana soared into the sky. A massive creature appeared, and despite the distance between us, it felt as if it was right in front of me. It was the 8-star magic beast that could destroy a country, Thunderbird, Gallia. Thunderbird, Gallia, LV. 175 race. Demon, elements. Lightning danger. Highest psychology. Hoping someone will stop him. Footnotes. Chapter 44. Thunderbird Subjugation, 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Thunderbird Subjugation, 2, Thunderbird Gallia flashed a red glare from its eyes while wrapping purple lighting mana around its massive wings. It was trying to cast a barrier. There was no doubt that the Thunderbird had exchanged spells with Dorothy just moments ago. Dorothy must have strategically retreated with the students. In an instant, a thunderstorm condensed around Gallia. Then, when the large amount of lightning mana had gathered, it formed a dense mass that was incredibly small. Lightning mana erupted with the roar of the Thunderbird, and swept across the old M.Riken Academy grounds in the blink of an eye. Thunder God's Barrier, Lightning Element, 7, Ka. Pajijijijijik. Yuwak. A violent gust of wind blew me away, which caused me to roll down the hill. For a brief moment, I felt a tingling sensation spread throughout my entire body. Some buildings were smashed to pieces, and trees were uprooted and toppled. Lightning strikes flashed countless times. The lightning mana spread out by the Thunderbird had transformed into a wide barrier. With a jolt, a powerful purple barrier was formed from a large amount of lightning mana. This generated a large amount of high-voltage currents. Thunder God's Barrier. The stage was set for the final part of the first semester of the first year of Magic Night of M.Riken. Act 3, Chapter 4, Thunderbird Subjugation. Boom! 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 At the same time, countless lightning bolts struck multiple places across the grounds of the old M.Riken Academy, and the Thunderbird's minions, the lightning harpies, emerged from them. A particularly intense lightning bolt struck the side of Carly Hall, and a large number of lightning harpies were concentrated there. This was because Vera the Summoner had marked Carly Hall. Arg! How many times have I rolled today? Seriously. I grumbled and quickly rose from the ground, resuming my run up the hill. The Thunder God's Barrier was impenetrable. This was due to the effect of Nest, a unique trait of Thunderbird Gallia, which caused a large amount of lightning mana to form a dense and solid barrier. If I had to estimate the level of the spell itself, I would say it was around level 190. So even if all of the Academy's staff, including Dorothy, fired spells at it all at once, it wouldn't produce any meaningful results. They would come to realize this later when they tested their spells against the barrier together. Kaya. The entrance to the palace. Like Carly Hall was shattered, and lightning harpies busted out. Lightning harpies were winged humanoid creatures whose entire bodies were composed of lightning mana. Lightning harpy, LV. Race. Demon, elements. Lightning danger. Medium psychology. Wants to kill humans. I arrived at Carly Hall just in time. Thank you for opening the door, my sweet EXP. The demons have been recognized as enemies. The unique trait, Hunter, is activated. The level and stats are temporarily greatly enhanced. The skill tree temporarily becomes +10. Frostfire, Ice Element, 4, Waweawak. My entire body became as light as a feather. My exhausted body went beyond being recovered and started to overflow with power. I felt as if I could shatter a building with a single punch. The flow of the mana within my mana circuit accelerated and the quality of my mana fundamentally changed. The unique trait, Hunter, had activated. I slaughtered the lightning harpies with a blast of cold blue flames of unparalleled power as I continued briskly moving my feet. After I entered Carly Hall, I found myself in a wide central corridor. A swarm of lightning harpies glared at me in unison. The top floor of this building was where Vera the summoner would bring loose. Therefore, that was my destination as well. Kiowa. Yeah, mobs. I ran up the central stairs 3 steps at a time and burnt the lightning harpies with Frostfire. Level up. Your level has increased to 58. You have gained an additional 2 stat points. The lightning harpies were a good source of EXP. I'm sorry Ian, but the Carly Hall free EXP is mine. T/N, originally the word was honeypot, which is used in a way to mean, this is so easy or, this is so free. Phew, I finally made it to the top floor, which was lined with statues of wizards and knights. Although they showed signs of aging, their designs were still magnificent. At the end of a red-carpeted room stood a grand altar. With its high ceilings, the view from the top floor of Carly Hall was magnificent, the scenery was even comparable to that of a breathtaking cathedral. I wiped the beads of sweat that trickled down my forehead and cast a glance out the window. The Thunderbird flapped its wings in a spectacle of overwhelming power. It slowly made its way towards my location, accompanied by Luce and Vera the Summoner. They would soon destroy the top floor's roof and come in. Luckily enough, they wouldn't go out of their way to look for the traces of the lightning harpies I killed. I fought cautiously because I didn't want them to find any traces of magic outside Carly Hall. Eden. As light brown mana gathered in front of me, it took the form of Eden, my small golem familiar. Q. Run away. Q. Vera the Summoner could steal her opponent's familiar at will. However, I could avoid the disaster of Eden being taken away from me by getting rid of him ahead of time. Eden tilted his head in confusion, perhaps wondering about my intentions. After I urged him to quickly leave Carly Hall, Eden nodded his head with a puzzled expression and trudged out. This simple action ensured that Vera wouldn't be able to steal my familiar, a fate that had befallen many because they were unaware of this tactic. Now, I just had to hide according to my plan. Tap, tap, tap. Fortunately, I knew the perfect place to hide. I started knocking on several places behind the walls of the altar. In Magic Knight of M. Raken, once the Thunderbird subjugation was over, one would be able to enter a secret location within Carly Hall. My plan was to hide in that secret location. The game depicted it as something that could be found when one knocked on a certain place along the wall. I must be close to it by now. Tap, tap, tap. Thud, thud. It's here. It sounded hollow on the inside. I checked the pattern on the wall and found the location of the handle. I put my right hand near the handle and faintly channeled my mana through it. Then, it slowly absorbed mana from my hand to the inside of the wall. It felt like being on the shore of a calm lake. And just like that, I was inside the wall. The first thing I noticed inside the inner room were the luminescent stones that lined the walls, emitting a faint light. My gaze was immediately drawn towards a cramped and run-down study. It was filled with bookshelves stacked high with books. It was a cramped, stuffy space. At the far end of the room stood a miniature-sized desk with a dusty book on top of it. It was nothing special, just a book with a setting from Magic Knight of M. Raken. It contained hints related to the arch-wizards of each element. There was nothing worth reading. To begin with, I didn't even have enough time to look. A demon has been detected nearby. Demon detection had activated. Vera the Summoner was nearby. I felt an intense aura from beyond the wall. Vera the Summoner, LV. 125 race. Demon elements. Darkness, lightning danger. High psychology. Rejoicing at the thought of having obtained the strongest familiar. I put my ear against the wall to understand the situation. Kwaang. I heard the ceiling collapse. The outer walls and ceiling had been shattered to accommodate the Thunderbird's gigantic body. By now, the Thunderbird subjugation party should have been formed with Ian Fairytale, a light element wielder who could deliver a devastating blow to the Thunderbird, and the strongest powerhouse of M.Riken Academy, Dorothy Hartnova, at its core. For reference, the Thunderbird subjugation party wasn't easy to create. The main reason for that was because the "let's wait for the Academy's administration" camp and the "let's go on the offensive" camp were at odds with one another. As a result, the first-year students stepped forward to fight, in a scene straight out of a shounen manga, and so the Thunderbird subjugation team was formed. I remember feeling a rush of excitement as I watched that scene. If there's a variable, it's the honor students. Originally, it was normal for the honor students to have passed the end-semester evaluation before the Thunderbird subjugation took place. For example, in Magic Knight of M.Riken. After Kaya got her third fell card, she managed to get a feel for mana perception, which allowed her to easily find the two other fell cards. Since she passed her exam like that, she didn't play much of a role in the Thunderbird subjugation. The same went for other Class A students and the Class B honor students. But this time, it was different. Due to Luce's rampage and me being the focus of a fierce battle, the Class A students and the top-ranked honor students from Class B couldn't pass the exam before the Thunderbird appeared. It was a fact that could be inferred by the scoreboard as one climbed up the hill. As a result, it was highly likely that they were organized as a full-scale subjugation party. This was because the injured students joined the subjugation party after being healed by the shelter's healing wizards. However, it should be noted that only those who wanted to join the subjugation team actually participated. At the very least, Class A's Kaya and Lisetta would participate unconditionally. Kaya had a sense of justice to protect people, and Lisetta had a courageous desire to fight against the lightning harpies and the Thunderbird. I guess you could say this is a favorable variable for me. It was safe to say that the subjugation party's stability had slightly increased. The support from the helpers would be even stronger than in the original scenario. The mission of the Thunderbird subjugation party was simple. Defeat the lightning harpies and storm Carly Hall. When the Thunderbird appeared, Dorothy focused on protecting people, while Ian focused on striking the Thunderbird with a sword attack enveloped with a light spell. Lastly, go to Carly Hall and defeat Vera the Summoner. After that, the mission would be over. They argued amongst themselves and said that the plan was absurd. At that moment, Mateo exclaimed, "There is no other way," and I witnessed the students' resolve grow as they said their lines one by one. This was also one of my favorite scenes. Of course, only the main lines of the plan were easy to understand, but the subjugation party still moved systematically after determining their formation and route. They must have worked together to implement the strategy in a timely manner in order to minimize casualties. Dorothy is there too, so don't you dare recklessly charge in and faint, Ian. I'll quickly get rid of the crazy bitch and put an end to this situation. I should start preparing soon. I took out the magic cloak of disguise, Berserker, from my magic bag and began to put it on. It was just in case I was ever in a situation where my identity could be revealed. Kayaho. On the top floor of Carly Hall, beyond the wall where Isaac was hiding. Even though the sky was not visible due to the Thunderbird's barrier, it was a gloomy evening. Vera the Summoner, a gray-skinned demon with a height of 3 m, twirled around in circles with her arms outstretched to her sides. Despite the sloppiness of her dress, her movements were reminiscent of an actress on a stage. Ah, the best, ah. To have the best familiar in my hands, I, Vera the Summoner, am very lucky. Ah, it's so cute, cute, cute. The ceiling and one of the outer walls were blown in half as the Thunderbird's huge body filled the top floor of Carly Hall. Vera screamed with affection as she stroked Galia. Her eyes were bloodshot with bulging veins, her voice was raspy, and blood spurted from her mouth. Kaya, so cute, so cute. My familiar is so cute, I'm going crazy. Afterwards, Vera the summoner scratched her frizzy brown hair like a dog and hit the horn on her forehead. She scratched and rubbed the Thunderbird's cheek with her nails and palms, which were covered with scraped skin and blood. The darkness mana that coursed through Thunderbird Galia's body made it unable to resist Vera, and it merely shivered. Vera's absolute domination familiar. Limited magic was so powerful that not even the powerful Thunderbird could resist. This black bird belongs to me, Vera. My new son. It's such a waste for someone like you. Vera the summoner hummed her own impromptu song as she gazed up at Thunderbird Galia's original master floating above the altar. A female student with rose gold hair was restrained in a standing position within a powerful lightning shield made of the Thunderbird's mana. She was like a stuffed doll. She couldn't move. All of her mana was drained by the Thunderbird, and all her strength left her body. She didn't even have the strength to open her eyes properly, and she laid limp like a corpse. It's a waste. Vera the summoner screamed with her fists clenched, then bared her sharp teeth and giggled. He. Oh no, the humans are on their way. They're coming to save you. They're coming to save you, to save you, to save you. But what can they do? My familiar, my black bird, will kill all of your friends, Kiik. Within the lightning shield, no answer came out of Luce's mouth. She drifted along the far sides of consciousness and reality. Ah, here they come, here they come. Vera the summoner shouted as she looked out of the window. The subjugation party was charging towards Carly Hall, while enveloped in a translucent protective shield made of colorful starlight. It was a group of professors, proctors, and students in their school uniforms. They had already begun climbing the hill that led to Carly Hall. They're here, they're here. Even the Child of Light. They're already marching towards the underworld on their own. Vera, who had been laughing manically while splattering blood, suddenly stopped and glanced at Thunderbird Galia. There was a change in the atmosphere, as if she had a sudden change of heart. Vera's waist bent grotesquely to the side, and then she commanded solemnly. Kill them all. Suddenly, the darkness mana that enveloped the Thunderbird surged even thicker. The Thunderbird screamed in agony and flashed his red eyes. He spread his massive wings and soared above the already collapsed ceiling. Kaya. Boom 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 boom. The lightning barrier responded to the Thunderbird's roar. With a single flap of his wings, menacing purple thunderbolts struck in several directions. The Thunderbird subjugation party stopped in their tracks and gasped at the sight of its imposing presence. A murderous tension settled heavily in the air. With a bolt of lightning, the Thunderbird arrived in front of the subjugation party. The battle had begun. He. Oh, everyone's going to die, they're going to die, die. Vera the summoner laughed with an excited voice, stretched her arms out to the sides, and began to spin around again. Oh, you foolish creatures, you've made a stupid choice by trying to save that ugly woman. Kaya. Frost explosion, ice element, 5, Kwaha. While Vera the summoner frantically screamed, she felt a sense of danger from behind and quickly threw her body to the side. However, her left arm had already been completely blown off from a brief blast of ice. Her frozen arm brought her excruciating pain, causing her to let out a ear-piercing scream. Ice wall, ice element, 4, at the same time, the ice wall draped over the shattered outer wall. Vera instinctively felt danger and quickly bent her knees, then leapt over the broken outer wall with incredible speed. Before the ice wall could be fully erected, she barely landed on top of the building. Oweya. What are you? The ice mass created by the frost explosion and the ice wall that failed to encapsulate Vera turned into light blue powder that scattered and disappeared. A monster appeared in front of Vera's eyes as it stood before the altar. It had an unruly appearance with a navy blue hood tightly pulled over its head. The razor-sharp teeth that were tightly packed in its mouth were more menacing than those of any beast, and its skin was as pitch black as ink. Above the altar was a female student with rose gold hair, protected by a lightning shield. The monster turned its back on the altar and glared at Vera the summoner as if to protect the student. Cold Divergence, Ice Element, 1. The black monster was emitting a pale, chilly aura from its entire body. His large, round red eyes glowed with a murderous intent. Gahahahahaha. The monster's roar shook Carly Hall. Magic cloak of disguise, Berserker. To others, it looked and sounded like that, regardless of the will of the one who wore it. Heavy mana flowed like the wind and brushed against Vera's skin. When Vera realized what was happening, she shut her loud mouth. The mana she felt from it surpassed her very own. Vera smiled. She had thought of something fun. Chiing. Kawaawa. Kayaea. A multicolored beam of starlight pierced through the Thunderbird's shoulder. The light exerted a gravitational force on the parts it touched, tearing off the flesh and pulling the bones, before exerting a repulsive force that crushed the Thunderbird's shoulder. The power of starlight magic mercilessly tore apart its opponent with irregular physical force. The Thunderbird let out a scream and unleashed a barrage of lightning. The purple magic circle carved in the sky rained down countless lightning strikes towards the subjugation party. It was a wide-range attack that could cause fatal injuries with just a graze. The proctor, Dorothy Hartnova, hastily deployed a starlight shield to protect the subjugation party. As soon as the Thunderbird's lightning bolt touched the shield, it was distorted and neutralized. Ah, that electric chicken! Dorothy was frustrated by her inability to launch a powerful attack at the Thunderbird. She could have used high-powered spells to her heart's content if there was no one in the barrier, but she now had to prioritize protection. In the end, Dorothy had no choice but to quickly use Starlight's shield to protect the subjugation party. The Thunderbird subjugation party was engaged in a fierce battle against Thunderbird Gallia. Their goal was to win while preserving everyone's lives. They were able to set such an absurd goal even with an 8-star magic beast as their enemy because there were two beings who could deal effective damage to the Thunderbird, and one of them could even create a powerful Starlight shield. However, when did he pass out again? Someone wake him up. Ian. Amy Holloway, the healing wizard of the subjugation party, cried out in desperation. Ian Fairytale, a key force capable of using light magic that could counter the Thunderbird. At some point, he had passed out with his back leaning against a pile of rubble. Footnotes. Chapter 45. Thunderbird Subjugation, 3, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Thunderbird Subjugation, 3, Thunderbolt, Lightning Element, 4, Quagwang. I tried to chase after Vera the Summoner when suddenly, a lightning bolt struck right in front of me. It made me instinctively jump back. Heh, he. Vera looked at me with bloodshot eyes and let out an eerie laugh. Despite the fact that she must have realized that she was much weaker than me. This was because the true power of Vera the Summoner lied in her ability to control familiars. Her strength or weakness wasn't determined by her own strength, but by the strength of the familiars she controlled. Darkness mana rose like thick clouds, spreading out far and wide. The darkness mana covered the sky like a dense fog, and countless familiars revealed themselves from within it. Beyond the collapsed ceiling, an army of various animal-like familiars, their own elemental mana imbued with darkness mana, filled the sky. Kaya ha 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 ha. An evil laughter echoed throughout. A colossal familiar, large enough to even overwhelm the army, revealed itself within the massive pool of spherical darkness mana. A muscular body covered in red armor. Its 3 pairs of wings were riddled with bizarre eyeballs, and its face which resembled that of a sea turtle bore a grotesque smile. It was Hackle, a 7-star familiar that had become a demon. Hackle, LV. 140 race. Demon elements. Lightning danger. High psychology. Wants to tear your limbs off. Hee 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 hee. You cute little things, have you come to protect your mommy? Nay, Vera the summoner climbed onto a winged pterodactyl familiar, infused with darkness mana and light green wind, and flew upwards. She asked questions and answered them herself as she posed with exaggerated gestures, as if she was performing in a play. The winged pterodactyl familiar flapped its wings and spat out blood from its mouth with a squeaky sound. Splendid, splendid. Our lovely little ones. Let's subdue that bastard, chew on their entrails, and carefully separate their limbs. You got all that? Me, upon Vera's command, the horde of familiars roared at me. It was a sorrowful roar, filled with grief. The army of familiars, now deeply corrupted by darkness mana, had become magic beasts of darkness that could never revert back to their original state, even if Vera were to die. Their resentment spilled out through their cries. Hackle laughed wickedly and stretched his arms towards the sky. A huge purple magic circle trailed just out of reach of the Thunderbird's barrier. At that moment, numerous magic circles of various shapes and colors dazzled in midair. They were only aimed at me with the sole purpose of taking me down. It would have been a breathtakingly beautiful sight if it wasn't a spell meant to kill me. Quang! The ground was ripped apart. With a single stomp, cracks appeared on the top floor of Carly Hall. I channeled ice mana into my hands and took a battle stance. Amidst the large scale magic circles that covered my field of vision, a lone light blue magic circle emitted light from within the half-destroyed building. Kaya ha 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 ha. Alongside Hackle's hearty laughter. The magic circles of the army of familiars simultaneously unleashed their spells. Whirr. Qua. Quagagagagag. Durr. Dozens of lightning bolts branched out. A storm of fire and ice rushed towards me, ice spears cut through the air, and rocks attempted to crush me. The oncoming elemental spells rained down on me, with nowhere to hide from it. Then, all those attacks suddenly stopped, as if time itself had frozen for a moment. Frost Wave, Ice Element, 6, Swee. Kararararak. With a single powerful swing of my arm, the magic circle I created unleashed a fierce wave of cold in an instant. The pale blue cold gale and thick snow swallowed all the elemental attacks and spread out in all directions, solidly freezing the army of familiars. After they met their futile end, the familiars began to fall vertically. Their bodies, frozen to the core, shattered helplessly into pieces as they hit the ground, the sound of glass shattering echoed. Ha-ha-ia. Vera, riding her pterodactyl familiar from far away, had a horrified expression on her face. The 7-star familiar, Hackle, appeared to be unaffected by the frost wave I had cast from a distance. He seemed to have high elemental resistance. I bent my knees and gave strength to my legs. Then, I kicked off the ground and leaped towards Hackle with all my might. Kuwung. My body fiercely cut through the air with the sound of a cannon firing. For a brief moment, only the sound of my hood flapping vigorously echoed through my ears. In an instant, I reached Hackle and grabbed him by the nape of his neck. Kayak. Chukuk. Hackle's scream intersected with my berserker's roar. In order to shake me off, Hackle writhed his body, and engraved purple magic circles all around us. His magic circles followed his left hand, he then aimed at me. Thunderclap, Lightning Element, 5, FZZZZZZZ. Quackakakak. The magic circles aimed at me simultaneously fired spherical lightning bolts. With a thunderous roar, dozens of purple currents branched out, which threatened to electrocute my body. They tried to fry me with the extreme heat they generated. despite being struck by the powerful and destructive thunderclap. Ice Barrier, Ice Element 2, the basic elemental spell, Ice Barrier, was enough to protect my body. Ice created with an ice spell is unable to conduct electricity when struck by a lightning spell. Thus, one must solely rely on brute force to penetrate ice magic with lightning magic. On top of that, I was wearing the elemental bracelet. To prepare for Act 3, Scene 4 of Magic Knight of M. Riken, I had increased my lightning elemental resistance. Furthermore, my basic elemental resistance for lightning was especially high. Not to mention, I was 18 levels higher than Hackle. His attack felt like a slight static shock at most. It's my turn now. Guru. I channeled ice mana into my right hand and condensed it. Soon, a light blue magic circle materialized in front of me. Hackle struggled violently, trying to shake me off, but the more he resisted, the tighter I clenched his throat with the intention to tear it out. Just like that, I unleashed the condensed ice mana at him. Frost Explosion, Ice Element, 5, Kwa Kayak. An explosion of ice erupted. The explosion of mana shredded Hackle's insides, and the ice surged in an instant, freezing his battered body. I dispersed the ice, and a massive amount of light blue powder scattered into the air. Alhuff Hackle's mangled body leaked purple blood, he still screamed and resisted. Once more. I condensed ice mana into my right hand again. The magic circle 4, Frost Explosion, appeared before me. I unleashed the mana towards Hackle. Kayak. The light blue ice rampaged and completely obliterated Hackle's body. A huge ice formation extended from his body, and cut through the air. Hackle struggled to maintain his balance and started falling straight down. I dispersed the ice and fiercely threw my right fist towards him. Boom! My fist, much smaller compared to Hackle, buried itself into his sea turtle-like head, and distorted his face. The eerie sound of breaking armor and a skull being crushed was heard. The air pressure spread out, and the sound of the punch resounded loudly. The light blue powder from the ice dissipated, and circular shock waves formed in the air. By then, Hackle was already falling to the ground at a terrifying rate. Whoosh! Quang! Hackle's massive body fell with a violent crash. Plunged into the ground, he destroyed half of Carly Hall. Dust swirled like a storm, but it couldn't hide Hackle's enormous body. He laid there with half his head caved in, covered in blood. He could no longer muster the strength to futilely resist me. My children. Kaya. My babies, my Bobby. Vera cried out in anguish. She was heartbroken at the sight of her familiars dying so gruesomely. Her mental anguish stemmed from her possessiveness. Now, there was nothing left to protect her. As my body slowly fell under the influence of gravity, I wrapped my hands in an icy flame and imbued it with black ice, before I directed it at Vera. Frostfire, Ice Element, 4, plus Black Ice, Ice Element, 5, equals Winter Hellfire, Ice Element, Hawayak. The dark blue icy flame spread out, and covered an area large enough to engulf the entire academy grounds. It dispersed on such a large scale that Vera couldn't avoid it. Soon, between the gaps of the icy flame, I saw Vera and her pterodactyl familiar fall to the ground while engulfed in flames. I extinguished the flame and let my body fall to the ground, surrendering myself to gravity. Thud. I landed on the top floor of Carly Hall, now barely recognizable as a building. In front of me, Vera and her pterodactyl familiar writhed on the ground like trampled earthworms. Their entire bodies were frozen stiff due to the deep chill that penetrated their very bones. They trembled as if they were victims who wandered through a snowy mountain ravaged by a blizzard, and then collapsed. Vera the summoner was vulnerable without her familiars. My babies, my babies. Ah, Aeawa. Dead, Diawad, sob, Diawad. Dead, dead, Vera frantically clawed at the ground and bitterly wept like a parent who had lost her child. Now it was over. I approached Vera to finish her off. At that moment, a dense shield of lightning enveloped the demon. Kaya. The screech of a bird of prey. My heart sank. I hurriedly deployed a thick, ice wall. Ice wall, ice element, 4, chain lightning, lightning element, 5, FZZZZZZZZT. Kwaang. Ugh. Garuk. A flash of light. Thick lightning struck me like a chain, it twisted and turned in order to ambush me. The chain lightning destroyed the ice wall with sheer destructive power and completely engulfed my body. The intense current coursed through my entire body. I lost consciousness for a moment as my insides burned with pain. 1 second. That was how long it took for me to regain consciousness. I smelled burnt flesh. It was my own. Smoke billowed like mist from my scorched skin. Ah, crazy. My hood and part of my mask had been burnt off by the lightning. As soon as I realized that my berserker disguise had been compromised, I took off the suffocating hood. I should have been in unbearable pain, but thanks to the effect of Hunter, my body had transcended humanity and I only felt as if I had entered a sauna. Thanks to the ice wall that served as a barrier, it broke the momentum of the lightning. Cold divergence, ice element, 1, I released a faint cold air to cool my body. That I caught a glimpse of the black thunderbird, Dahlia, draped in darkness mana and purple lightning mana, flying toward me. Kararara, Kararara. Bang. 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 A cluster of colorful stars emitted light and protected the subjugation party from the dozens of lightning bolts that struck down from under the purple, thunder god's barrier. The Thunderbird's lightning spell was meant to prevent Dorothy from finding the opportunity to perform such an attack. In the distance, I could see the subjugation party being protected by a shining barrier. The Thunderbird's magic could attack the subjugation party from anywhere. Dorothy couldn't recklessly chase the Thunderbird. Her best option was to protect the subjugation party with a barrier while she chased the Thunderbird down the hill. But now, the Thunderbird was spreading its massive wings at me, blocking the sky. Thunderbird, Dahlia, LV. 175 race. Demon elements. Lightning danger. Highest psychology. I will kill you. Kill you. You. I don't want to hurt anyone else. Aw, my cute, cute baby bird. Have you come to protect mommy? Vera twisted her neck grotesquely as she looked at Thunderbird Dahlia. The flesh of her throat was torn and blood oozed from it. The Thunderbird's condition wasn't great either. Its body was battered and torn, and purple blood leaked from its entire body. If I were to estimate its HP, around 20%. Its health was more depleted than I expected. It must be due to the excellent support from the honor students who joined the subjugation party, which helped Dorothy and Ian. From Dorothy's perspective, it must have been more convenient to reduce the Thunderbird's HP compared to the original scenario. I didn't know how well Ian performed, but I could see traces of light mana here and there. It seemed that he managed to land some attacks. Then, he must have passed out. Kaya. The Thunderbird screeched at me, it opened its beak full of neatly arranged sharp teeth. A giant purple magic circle was engraved around the Thunderbird. The moment I saw it, I sensed my impending doom. An insta-kill pattern that was used once the Thunderbird was cornered, the 7-star lightning spell, Thunderstorm Annihilation. The reason it was an instant kill was purely due to its immense power. To block that spell, one must use a light elemental sword attack to strike down all the purple magic stones that would protrude from the Thunderbird's body as soon as the magic circle manifested. In other words, I couldn't stop that spell. I could feel the high density mana that Hackle couldn't even begin to compare to. It was the worst case scenario. Truly, the worst. Plan B, Plan C, Plan D. All the plans I had prepared to counter various variables that would prevent a bad ending had been thrown out the window. In my focus to ensure Ian would survive the Thunderbird's instant kill pattern, I had failed to consider the possibility of the Thunderbird actually coming after me. Failure. I failed. An overwhelming amount of mana, unlike any demon I had ever faced before, weighed down on me. The magic circle's majesty overwhelmed me. Despite the situation being seemingly hopeless, my fiercely pounding heart began to gradually calm down. Even as the Thunderbird screeched and its earth-shaking thunder roared, I carefully assessed the situation despite thunderstorm annihilation, trying to engulf me in terror. Then I suddenly remembered a setting I had forgotten about. The secondary effect of the passive, Ice Sovereign. It was a setting that had nothing to do with the story of Magic Knight of M.Raken, so I had forgotten about it. It was an effect that gave me a heart as cold as ice in the face of an utterly hopeless situation. It was the frozen soul effect contained within Ice Sovereign. I tried not to become used to failure. During the days when I studied in a 3.1 room apartment in Silim Dong for 5 years, I piled up law books like a mountain in preparation for the bar exam. What scared me the most was getting used to this lifestyle. Even though I failed the bar exam every year, I tried not to get used to failure. I tried to think of that cramped space that confined me as just a temporary accommodation. So, while I studied under heavy pressure every day, I played Magic Knight of M.Raken. As a reward for finishing my daily studies, I tried to distract myself from the repeated failures and despair I faced each and every year. They say that if a person wore a psychological mask, that mask would become their face. Maybe the influence of those days played a part in my ability to resist despair, even in the face of such a hopeless situation. Well, it was a boring story. Ice Sovereign, Ice Element, 9, cough. Blood regurgitated and poured out of my mouth. It was because I had unleashed the full power of Ice Sovereign. I felt as if every single cell in my body was being pricked by needles, but it was more than bearable compared to when Hunter was deactivated. The saturation of my skin increased. My silver hair bristled, and a gentle pale blue cold air gently flowed from my body. Instinctively, I judged that I could only endure for up to 10 seconds. If it's 10 seconds, it's not just enough, it's more than enough. I judged that I had a chance of winning. No, I wanted to believe in that sliver of hope. Otherwise, my feet wouldn't be able to move. I kicked off the ground and leapt towards the Thunderbird like a spring. 8 light blue magic circles followed me from behind, and in front of the dark blue mana condensed in my right hand, the magic circle of Black Ice Explosion was engraved. Kaya. In the blink of an eye, my magic circle and the Thunderbirds emitted a brilliant light, unleashing their respective spells. Thunderstorm Annihilation, Lightning Element, 7, Abyssal Glacier, Ice Element, 7, Supapapapapat. Quagagagagang. Qua. A bright light engulfed everything in my sight. As colossal bolts of lightning roared, they engraved their presence in all directions without any gaps. The eerie blue light of the Abyssal Glacier materialized, it caught up with the speed of lightning and even froze the lightning bolts that should have disappeared in an instant. A cold gale accompanied by snow mercilessly lashed my skin with Carly Hall at its focal point. The pale blue chill flowed from my body due to the effect of Ice Sovereign. It broke the momentum of the lightning strike. However, I couldn't block the sensation of currents coursing through my body. And amidst the unstoppable collision, I slammed the dark blue ice mana I had condensed in my right hand into the Thunderbird. Qua. Again, and again, and again. Without rest, I condensed the dark blue mana in both hands and wildly swung my arms. I relentlessly fired, Black Ice Explosion, at the Thunderbird. Qua. 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 My ears rang. I couldn't hear properly. Even so, I couldn't think of anything other than casting spells until the Thunderbird fell. I ignored the pain that engulfed my entire body. I roared out like a beast as if my throat was about to burst. I condensed ice mana in both my hands and exploded it again and again. I blasted, black ice explosion, towards the Thunderbird. Every time I unleashed, black ice explosion, dark blue ice crystals spread through the area and crumpled into dust, only to repeat this cycle over and over again. The subsequent explosions shattered a huge tree of frozen lightning that had grown to encompass the area. Dark blue masses of ice erupted. The ice of the afterlife scattered in all directions. I couldn't think of anything else. I instinctively used defrost to eliminate the ice created by abyssal glacier. A cold wind rushed in. The eerie blue mana ran rampant as the ice of the afterlife disappeared. At that moment, what caught my eyes was the black Thunderbird, twisted and trapped within the enormous piece of ice. Vera the summoner, who had been lying beside the ice, had half her body blown off. The rest of her body was no different from a severely injured person that was frozen and frostbitten. It seemed to have happened when my ice mana exploded, condensed, and exploded again. She looked at me with a distorted face before turning into ash like dust and scattering. When I finally regained my senses, I was amidst a snowstorm and cold gale. I just stood there. Standing. Congratulations. You've defeated the demon, Vera the Summoner, LV 125, and gained EXP. Level up. Your level has increased to 60. You have gained 4 stat points. You have unlocked the achievement. Unfazed by 7. Star Magic. All elemental resistance has increased by 10 points. You have unlocked the achievement. Defeating the Thunderbird. You have gained an additional 15 stat points. You have bravely defeated the nation. Destroying Magic Beast, Thunderbird Gallia, LV 175, and Vera the Summoner, LV 125. The Great Witch of Heaven's Wrath, who has been overseeing the world as a mediator between this world and the next, expresses her gratitude to you. You have unlocked the achievement. To Gretel. You have received a gift from the Great Witch of Heaven's Wrath. Chapter 46. Thunderbird Subjugation. 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Thunderbird Subjugation. 4. It felt like I was nestled in a cozy cocoon. The intense pain that had enveloped my entire body had softened. As I blinked a few times, my blurry vision cleared, and the surrounding scenery was revealed. Then, my eyes widened. It was a bright world. That was the only way I could describe it. The sun that hung in the sky emanated a gentle sensation that did not dazzle the eyes. Surrounding me were rows of trees that emitted a pale yellow light. Beyond the horizon, there was nothing but an unfamiliar light. What is this place? I was invited to an unknown world. It was like the fictional hell that Leafa the Elusive had used. However, the difference between this bright world and fictional hell was that I had never seen this place in Magic Night of M.Raken. It was uncharted territory. Despite my bewildered state, I tried to make sense of the situation. Are you surprised? A deep voice rang in my head. I quickly turned my head in the direction of the voice. There stood a massive black bird that appeared out of place in the surrounding scenery. It folded its wings and looked down at me. It was Thunderbird Gallia. My heart sank for a brief moment, but when I realized that it wasn't in a combat stance, I dropped my guard. What's going on? It seems that we are in the mid-heaven realm. It appears that my former master invited us here. The mid-heaven realm. A place where souls who were near death, or who had died but had not yet passed on, were invited in order to sort out their thoughts and eventually find solace. It also served as a relay point for the souls who yearned to meet other souls in the afterlife. This allowed them to spend the rest of eternity together. It was a setting in the Magic Night of M.Raken. Guidebook. It was known as a setting prepared for the characters who had unfortunately died. In the game's story, however, there was no reason for Ian to come to this world. The game ended with him becoming a renowned magic knight who had established a happy family with the chosen heroine. So, here I am. As far as I knew, the Mid-Heaven realm was located on the boundary between this world and the afterlife. In this world, time passed indefinitely, and thus no time passed in reality. There was nothing to do here. Not even magic worked here. It seemed that the one who had invited me into this world was the previous master of the Thunderbird, the Great Witch of Heaven's Wrath. A tragic witch from Luce's past who embraced death under false accusations. Where is your former master? The Thunderbird raised its head and pointed its beak towards the sun, which emanated a gentle light. Its rays softly warmed my entire body. The scent I longed for is coming from over there. Did that mean that the sun was the Great Witch of Heaven's Wrath? Although I somewhat understood the situation, I couldn't help but feel a little confused. Moreover, the To Gretel achievement was one of the legendary achievements that were unlocked when one cleared a major scenario, but there were no separate rewards or new events. It was merely a trophy of sorts. Who could have ever imagined that it would turn out like this? I want to know your name. The voice of the Thunderbird echoed in my head. It felt like it resonated within my head. Isaac. I am Galia. After suffering under that curse for years. Thank you for saving me, child. I truly mean this from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. The deep yet gentle voice of the Thunderbird contained a subtle sob. I could only watch his figure in silence, Adadapubu. Suddenly, the voice of an energetic boy came from my feet. As I lowered my head, I saw a small familiar staring at me intently. It was a raccoon familiar with lightning mana wrapped around its tail. A status window did not appear. Perhaps it was because there was no physical body. But, what is this? Suddenly, numerous magic beasts with elemental mana wrapped around their bodies surrounded me. They appeared in front of me in the blink of an eye. I was startled and hastily looked around. These familiars were the ones I fought earlier. These were the familiars that had been completely corrupted by the darkness mana and met a gruesome end by my magic. However, there were no longer any traces of darkness mana on their bodies. Thank you, Pubu. Ha! The purple raccoon familiar shouted at my feet before tightly hugging my leg. Then, the familiars that had surrounded me started to approach me. They gently rubbed their cheeks against my body, cuddled me, or licked my cheeks and the back of my hands with their tongues. I felt utterly bewildered. Thank you, meow. Cool. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for freeing me from that demon. Thank you, gratitude to the Great One. The voices of countless familiars gently echoed in my head like waves. The bitter emotions they had harbored while being controlled by Vera the Summoner were seeping into me. With each word they uttered, an erratic, lukewarm wave seemed to continuously engulf my heart, giving me a solemn feeling. Kaya ha ha ha. You're strong, friend. You took a good hit. Hackle, the giant red magic beast, approached me with a hearty laugh. His turtle head, muscular body, and the eyes on his 3 pairs of wings were still the same. The familiars stopped their affectionate gestures and looked at Hackle in unison. Hackle stopped in front of me, looked down at me gently, and bent one knee to sit down. The eyes on Hackle's wings were all closed. His wings were slightly folded as if to show his respect towards me. You see, I always wanted to explore the vast world with my master. Hackle murmured with his eyes lowered. But, after being controlled by that demon, I ended up killing my master with my own hands. That day, I lost everything. A grumbling voice faintly echoed in my mind. Living under that demon was truly horrible. Even though we were once enemies, thank you for saving me. Really, thank you. I will never forget this favor, Hackle couldn't hold back the tears and covered his eyes with his large hands. After Hackle, the other familiars began to share their own stories. I listened in silence. I met that demon while eating meat with my master, meow. Now, I can never forget the smell of my master's blood, meow. My master always fell asleep with me in their arms. I loved being in their embrace. But I killed them with my own hands. As they were dying, they told me it was okay. They thanked me for traveling with them. My master picked me up when I was abandoned. I still vividly remember the sensation of piercing their heart. Adadapubu, Jerry, I was so angry being forcibly controlled by that woman. I was so mad. It was so hard. I cried every day. I couldn't save them. They had been so deeply corrupted by the darkness mana that they couldn't be saved, even if Vera the summoner had died. Even if they had been freed from Vera, they would have lived a cursed existence, unable to suppress their murderous urges. They would have continued to kill people. That's right. I didn't deserve their gratitude. I had simply killed the familiars here without hesitation to prevent a bad ending. Yet they thought I had saved them. They had longed for death, for an end to their suffering. Is that so? Despite the numerous voices that echoed in my head, I understood each and every one of the familiars' stories. So, I felt relieved. For a while, the familiars shared the numerous stories they had accumulated over their life, laughing and crying as they spoke. I nodded my head, stroked their heads, and patted their backs. How much time had passed? On the horizon, 1 or 2 human figures emerged in the vast expanse of light. Their numbers quickly multiplied, reaching dozens in no time. As if coming to greet us, the individuals turned their gaze towards us. The intensity of the light made it difficult to make out their exact appearance, yet it seemed that all the familiars recognized them. The familiars froze in shock, as if time itself had stopped. Hackle's eyes also widened in disbelief. This place served as a relay for souls in the afterlife. It was obvious who the people in the mid-heaven realm had brought along with them. Soon, tears began welling up in the eyes of the familiars. They ran or flew towards those people. In an instant, the familiars cried as they hugged their masters. They shared how much they had missed them and how sad they had been. The masters tightly hugged their familiars, stroked their heads, and listened to their cries with a gentle smile. It's been a while, Dyke. Hackle stood in front of his master, a muscular man, and greeted him. As his master chuckled and extended his fist, Hackle hesitated for a moment. Hackle bumped fists with the muscular man. He seemed to be deep in thought as he recalled the time he had spent with his master. Soon after, the familiars and their respective masters started walking together, towards the vast world of light, into the afterlife. The familiars looked back at me and shouted their farewells. Thank you. Really, thank you. Thank you, human. I won't forget this favor. Adadapubu. I'm really grateful, meow. Ku. This mark of flame. I will remember you forever. I'll keep the grace of your noble deed in this body of fire even in the afterlife. Take care. Thank you. Thank you. Really, thank you. The vivid light enveloped the familiars as they returned to their masters. They disappeared beyond the horizon with excitement. I silently watched the scene and felt an indescribable emotion. Now, they would be together for an eternity. That would be long enough to forget the pain they had experienced. They would embark on new adventures that they couldn't complete in this world. The figures of the familiars disappeared from my sight. I closed my eyes for a moment, then quietly processed my emotions. I can feel it. The voice of the Thunderbird rang in my head. My former master seems to be very grateful. Though the sun was merely warm and gentle to me, it seemed to feel different to the Thunderbird. Even when I lost my reason, I could still feel Gretel's heart. So I knew that you became her friend. I wanted to say thank you, child. It seems my former master is also grateful to you for the same reason. Gretel. The former name of Luce. I was deep in thought. I calmly raised my head and stared at the great witch of heaven's wrath, who had been watching over the boundary between this world and the next. In Act 3, Chapter 4, Thunderbird Subjugation of Magic Knight of M. Rakan, there remained one final mission, to catch Luce, who was helplessly falling through the sky, her mana completely depleted. This journey would end with just that task. But then I realized why I was in the mid-heaven realm. I needed some time to organize my thoughts. I'm about to die, right? And so are you. I asked as I turned my head towards the Thunderbird. The Thunderbird bowed its head. It seemed like you were deliberately hiding your identity, so I intended to protect your secret, but it seems there's no need to do that now. A roundabout answer. It wasn't difficult to grasp what those words meant. I knew this would happen. How could I have survived unscathed after fighting against the level 175 Thunderbird Gallia? It was a futile ending. I did all that to prevent a bad ending. However, there was no rush of emotions, no flicker of intensity. It felt as if even the most fleeting emotions passed by without leaving a trace. Being able to stay calm even in the face of death must be due to the effect of Ice Sovereign. Someone once said, if the world were to end tomorrow, I would still plant an apple tree today. That's exactly how I felt at this moment. Send me back. Since it's come to this, there's one last thing I need to do. Luce is about to fall. There's no one else to catch her but me. If I'm destined to die anyways, I might as well save someone I deeply cherish. I adore Luce. As long as Magic Knight of M. Rakan is my reality, I can't bear to see her get hurt. So, at the very least, I want to save Luce before I go. And then it happened. The Great Witch of Heaven's Wrath expresses her gratitude to you. The Great Witch of Heaven's Wrath gazes into your fate and offers you with the gift she deems most necessary for you. A new system window appeared. Ugh. Suddenly, I felt a searing pain on my left wrist. Startled, I looked at my wrist. A black, magic circle-shaped seal was being engraved on it. Once it was completely engraved, the pain immediately stopped. What is this? Congratulations. You have acquired the 8-star familiar contract circle. My mouth was wide open. Magic beasts from 1-star to 4-star could be summoned with a familiar summoning circle, and if their wills align, a contract could be formed. From 5-star to 7-star, they couldn't be summoned by a familiar summoning circle, but if they meet and their wills align, a contract could be formed. On the other hand, an 8-star couldn't form a familiar contract at will, even if they had a good relationship or understood each other well. A special seal was required. That seal, the 8-star familiar contract circle, could only be obtained in the very late stages of Magic Knight of M. Rakan. The Great Witch of Heaven's Wrath had bestowed that upon me. What kind of fate did she see to give this to someone who was about to die? Just as I was about to ask the Great Witch of Heaven's Wrath, I lost my voice. The light emitting from the witch began to envelop my entire body. To Gretel. Suddenly, a young girl in a worn-out navy blue dress appeared before my eyes. Her rose-gold hair was particularly beautiful. She was laughing at an old witch who wore a black witch's hat with a hooked nose. A curious 10-year-old girl. She held the witch's hand and set off on an adventure. Time passed, and the girl in a school uniform was smiling brightly at the academy's graduation ceremony with the witch. Time passed again, and the woman who became a wizard boasted about her achievements to the witch. Time had passed once again, and the lady who became a tower master held the witch's hand and embarked on a new adventure. Her beaming smile was no different from the innocent laughter of the 10-year-old girl. The witch was so content with this scene that she laughed happily. The Great Witch of Heaven's Wrath. The events that would have unfolded had she not died of tragedy. The fate envisioned by the great witch of heaven's wrath, a reality that never came to be. They were fragments of a lost future, a calm solace in the sea of memories. I will always love you. Taking in that sight for the last time, I quietly closed my eyes. Chapter 47. Thunderbird Subjugation, 5, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Thunderbird Subjugation, 5, it was a famous story. Hansel and Gretel were born to a poor family in the woods. Their parents, who could no longer care for them, abandoned the young pair of siblings in the woods. The young girl, Gretel, cleverly dropped several stones along the way, which helped her and Hansel find their way back home. However, they were abandoned once again. They didn't have any stones prepared the next time, so they left breadcrumbs to mark their path. Unfortunately, the breadcrumbs were eaten by the forest birds, leaving them unable to find their way home. Hunger struck. The young siblings wandered through the woods in search of food. Unexpectedly, they discovered a house made of sweets and started hurriedly eating their fill, only to encounter the hooked-nose witch who lived inside. The witch took in the abandoned Hansel and Gretel. She cared for them wholeheartedly, but her true intentions were the first episode of Magic Night of M. Raken, behind the scenes, Hansel and Gretel. In the game, the original story of the fairy tale, Hansel and Gretel, took a twisted turn. One day, Hansel started to fatten up. The witch checked his condition by grabbing his wrist every day. Out of nowhere, Hansel's body began to swell abnormally. Not just Hansel, but children from other places had also begun to experience grotesque swelling. It was the activation of the evil dragon's sacrificial seal. Hansel's and Gretel's parents had allowed a high-ranking noble to sequentially engrave the evil dragon's sacrificial seal on their children, in exchange for a piece of meat. The seal was engraved on parts of the eye and brain. When the witch first discovered Hansel and Gretel, it was already too late to save Hansel. Fortunately, it was just in time to save Gretel. The witch managed to replace the parts of her eye and brain where the seal had been engraved, preventing her from becoming the evil dragon's sacrifice. This was the setting for Gretel's sudden improvement in eyesight and her ability to remember everything she saw. It was all thanks to the Candy House Witch's research, who burned her very own body. The witch knew that the evil dragon Orcus would appear and had tried to save the children in advance. She made her house from sweets to attract the children who had been victimized by the evil dragon. Eventually, the sky turned red. A massive black dragon, composed of countless decaying human corpses, burst through the clouds. It was the evil dragon Orcus, a catastrophe capable of destroying nations. The witch summoned her 8-star familiar, Thunderbird Dahlia, to confront the evil dragon and ultimately emerged victorious. Unfortunately, the curse of the evil dragon befell the Thunderbird. The Candy House Witch was falsely accused of using children as sacrifices to summon the evil dragon and was executed by the Empire in front of her house. Gretel tearfully hugged the witch in front of the numerous military forces. The witch entrusted Gretel with the Thunderbird and took her last breath. Gretel's heart shattered at that moment. Eventually, the truth was revealed, and the high-ranking noble who was the real culprit behind the summoning of the evil dragon Orcus was captured by the royal family and promptly executed. However, the country engraved the witch of the Candy House, who should have been recognized as a hero, as an evil woman in history. There was no better scapegoat than the Candy House Witch, who wasn't entangled in any political disputes. She was initially accused of killing many children. Although it was a false accusation, the cruel experimental area that used her own body as a test subject became a fitting piece of evidence for the charge. Thus, the Candy House Witch was labeled as the Great Witch of Heaven's Wrath, by attributing all sorts of grotesque evil deeds to her, which made her an enemy of the people. Only the Eltania family, who had received grace from the Candy House Witch, denied her infamy as the Great Witch of Heaven's Wrath. They took in Gretel as their own per the witch's request. And gave the child, who was struggling with her past, a new name, Luce Eltania. The barrier enveloped in purple lightning turned into shining powder and scattered into the sky. On the altar at the top floor of Carley Hall, which was so severely damaged that it no longer resembled a building, Luce's body started falling as the barrier of the Thunderbird was released. Thump! A man caught her. Luce couldn't muster any strength. Her mana was completely drained by the Thunderbird, and even her energy seemed to be depleted. Luce slowly opened her eyes, but her vision was so blurry that she couldn't make anything out. However, she could tell that a man was holding her in a princess carry. Who? No words came out of her mouth. Her mouth didn't move. With her blurry vision, Luce could barely discern the color of the man's clothes and the outline of his shoulders. Navy blue clothes, and broad shoulders. She felt the faint chill of ice mana. Grung. It must be you. There was no one else that came to mind as a navy blue-clad ice element user who could have broken through the Thunderbird and the demons. His physique looked different from what Luce knew, as if his disguise had been blown. But this physique feels oddly familiar. Don't elementalize your mana, instead, let it flow freely for the time being. And remember this sensation. I'm going to release it now. Not yet. Puhaha. Ahahahaha. Ha 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 ha. Oh, that's so funny. My stomach hurts. When she had been practicing elemental flower crafts, the memory of holding the hand of her silver-blue-haired friend popped up. Grung's touch on her arms and legs overlapped with that memory. She wasn't certain because the fabric of the clothes was in the way. However, the size of the hand she felt was too similar to that man's. Luce's pupils were shaking slightly. Sock. Drained of all her mana, Luce had no strength left. Soon, her stamina reached its limit. Her consciousness faded into the far distance. Asterisk. Goo, guck. As soon as I left the mid-heaven realm, I could feel how limited my body truly was. With the last of my strength, I caught Luce as she fell from the altar. I hastily erased the traces of my magic with defrost, and knew that I would soon be unable to move. I laid the unconscious Luce on the ground as the blue powder scattered. Then, I summoned Eden and had her lean against the altar. I then ordered Eden to take me and run away. It was entirely possible. Eden was able to grow in size by adding rocks to his body. Eden, now a size that fitted his golem race, ran with me in his arms. He urgently shouted at me with a thickened voice. The side effects of the Ice Sovereign and the battle against the Thunderbird rendered my body unable to properly function. The pain was excruciating. It was as if I was struck by a hammer all over my body, tormenting me relentlessly. However, I didn't even have the strength to wriggle or cry out in pain. Eden, let me down. Here, I didn't know where I was. My vision had become blurry, and I couldn't see anything. I was sure we had come quite far. My senses told me that we were behind Carley Hall, at the bottom of the hill. Perhaps just before entering the forest. It seemed like we were on the outskirts of the old M.Riken Academy grounds. The area was filled with the vibrant scent of trees and grass. Fortunately, it seemed like we had arrived at an inconspicuous spot. Eden laid me down on the grass. His voice was full of choking sobs. I couldn't help but feel sorry. When I could still see ahead, the last sight I had captured shimmered like a mirage. Was it the beauty of the landscape? Perhaps it was because of the Thunderbird's barrier being lifted and the disappearance of the lightning harpies. Or maybe it was the purple powder being engraved in the night sky like starlight. As I drifted through the memories of that landscape, I desperately clung to my fading mind and reminded myself why I had fled. The Great Witch of Heaven's wrath. She had looked into my fate and given me an 8-star contract circle as a gift, saying it was what I needed most. In other words, I wouldn't die. That's why I had fled, trying not to be noticed by the subjugation party. Suddenly, I recalled everything that had happened since I came to this world. I possessed Isaac, realized the protagonist's skills were terrible, and diligently tried to prevent a bad ending during the first semester. As I looked back on the past, it seemed like a futile way to meet my end, dying like this. An extra of Magic Knight of M. Reken, Isaac. I was not the protagonist of this world, Ian Fairytale was. All the hardships in this world existed to make him a hero. What difference does that make? No matter what, in my position, I was the protagonist. Even if my life seemed bleak, unsuccessful, and full of failure, I firmly believed that I was the protagonist of my own story. Even if Isaac was an extra when I played the game as Ian. If I live in this reality as Isaac, then I am the protagonist. Ian Fairytale. No matter what trials and tribulations came in. Magic Knight of M. Reken, he overcame them. So I, too, had been trying to overcome all the trials and tribulations that had come my way, following his example. So, will I die meaninglessly? Will I give up so easily? My specialty was gritting my teeth and relentlessly pursuing my goals. I would never give up. Only the sound of air escaping from my lungs seeped through my lips. I was running out of strength. Slowly, my eyes closed. The anticipation of being freed from this terrible agony once I closed my eyes welled up within me. My head was spinning. Still, I would never extinguish my will to never give up. In my hazy vision, slowly, a pitch-black darkness descended. Tree of Radiance, Plant Element, 7, a gentle energy enveloped me. It felt as if new life was coursing through my body. I opened my eyes. The sight of the barrier turning into a purple powder that illuminated the night sky caught my eye. My vision had returned. I turned my head to look towards Carly Hall above the hill. A gigantic tree, emitting a soft green glow, had casted a faint light over the old M. Reken Academy grounds. Countless fireflies spread out in all directions without any gaps. The pain faded. Slowly, I raised my upper body. Eden sobbed, shrank back to his usual size, and snuggled into my arms. Q. Eden, Psychology. Feeling happy and relieved that you've come back to life. The radiant tree stretched above Carly Hall. I knew what that tree was. It was Kaya Astrian's plant magic, the Tree of Radiance, which appeared in the second year of Magic Knight of M. Reken. It indiscriminately healed all living creatures within a certain radius. Why is that already? The soft green fireflies from the Tree of Radiance flew over and infused vitality into the plants around me. In the midst of those fireflies, I could guess the situation and its developments. Magic Knight of M. Reken, Act 3, Chapter 3, End of Semester Evaluation immediately led to Act 3, Chapter 4, Thunderbird Subjugation. In other words, the variables that occurred during the end of semester evaluation carried over to the Thunderbird subjugation. What could have been a variable worth mentioning in this end of semester evaluation? The most significant events would have been Luce's inexplicable massacre, the great battle, and the gift I gave to Kaya. Due to Luce, the top student's search for fell cards was delayed. They must have had difficulty with mana perception, exploration, and card snatching because they were too focused on escaping from the monster, Luce. Moreover, because of the large-scale battle, the second and third seats, as well as other A-class students and the top B-class students, had to remain at the exam site until the appearance of Vera the Summoner. As a result, most of the honor students joined the subjugation party, in contrast to the game. It was obvious that they would have helped Dorothy and Ian chip away at the Thunderbird's HP. That must have been why the Thunderbird's HP was reduced faster than I had expected. If they hadn't been there, I would have had to fight the Thunderbird with at least 30.4% more HP. I wouldn't have been able to avoid instant death if I lost that battle. The same went for Kaya. In the Thunderbird subjugation of Magic Knight of M. Reken, Kaya couldn't join the subjugation party. She quickly passed the exam once her mana perception improved after she found her third fell card. However, as Luce became a significant variable, Kaya ended up in the exam site until the appearance of Vera. Kaya also participated in the Thunderbird subjugation and would have felt a sense of anger as she watched the casualties accumulate. It was inevitable due to her personality. She would have longed to be of help, instead of only relying on Dorothy. The gift I gave her, the Armana wand, was Kaya's final weapon. It was impossible to obtain this weapon in the early parts of Magic Knight of M. Raken. It was purely a matter of money. However, I managed to acquire it early. As a result, the Armana wand I gifted to Kaya would have significantly increased her sensitivity to plant mana. Kaya's desire would have been realized in the form of a tree that emitted a warm light. It's so beautiful, really, the Tree of Radiance. A spell that healed all living creatures within a certain radius. Its healing range was quite wide. It was considered one of the most powerful healing spells, as it could heal even fatal wounds in an instant. Moreover, it was a plant spell. To use this element, one must receive the help of Sylphia, the Emerald Fairy, and completely react to plant mana. It would be difficult for an ordinary person, even if they tried for 100 years. A gentle green light enveloped the grounds of the old M. Raken Academy. As I unexpectedly regained my health, I felt an overwhelming sense of bewilderment. The only thing I could do was laugh. It felt as if that tree was the result of my journey throughout the first semester of my freshman year. An emotion that I couldn't put into words welled up inside of me. I quietly gazed at the Tree of Radiance. The combination of the purple powder slowly scattered by the disappearance of the Thunderbird's barrier and the giant radiant tree that stood alone in silence was incredibly beautiful. I couldn't take my eyes off it for a while. However, I couldn't just be lost in admiration. I needed to take off my magic cloak of disguise just in case. Hua! I took off my cloak and put it in my magic pouch. Although the Tree of Radiance fully healed my wounds, my strength hadn't recovered. Just the act of taking off my cloak was quite difficult. I thought I needed to bask in the light of the Tree of Radiance at least until my strength had recovered enough to return to the dormitory. It was like Isaac's photosynthesis. Eden came to my side and shook my arm. Such a cute little guy. I seated Eden on my lap and hugged him. That was when it happened. "President, what are you doing here?" A familiar voice echoed in my ears. For some reason, I felt an inexplicable sensation rising in my chest. When I turned my head towards the voice, I saw a female student wearing a witch's hat. She looked at me with a questioning gaze, her hands resting on her knees. Was it because I almost died for a moment? I couldn't help but smile as soon as I saw her welcoming face. I fought back against the tears that welled up and managed to fill my face with nothing but a smile. I took a quick, deep breath to regain my composure. Then I locked eyes with the beautiful female student with purple hair that was reflected in my vision. "Senior, you're late. Aren't you coming to my rescue too late?" I jokingly said to Dorothy Hartnova, and deliberately showed a tired expression. Seriously, a bunch of electric bird-like demonic creatures suddenly appeared. I barely escaped, you know. Your expression seems a little too relaxed for that. It's because I'm looking at you, senior. Nihihai, just like how my fan should be. Dorothy sat down next to me with a tucha and hugged her knees. Then, she stared at the Tree of Radiance, scattering its glorious jade-colored mana. Everything's resolved. The giant electric chicken was healed by that tree magic and is no longer our enemy. All the lightning demonic creatures have disappeared. Your stalker friend is safe too. No one died. I was wondering what was going on, but it seems like it was a pretty big deal. Yeah, it was a huge deal. I'm completely exhausted. Trying to protect people, doing this and that, Dorothy grumbled cheekily, then suddenly smiled and put her hand on her chest. So give me, your big sis, a chance to be comforted by our president. Consider it an honor. Dorothy's cheeky words were so cute that I inadvertently chuckled. You've worked hard, senior. Oh yeah. You're really strong and cool, senior. Although, you were too late to come and save me. Dorothy, with a flustered face, broke into a cold sweat. Well. It seems like our president had a hard time too. Dorothy sneakily glanced at me, and quickly changed the subject. I responded with a cheeky attitude, just like she had moments ago. Yes, I had to take the exams, and then run away from the sudden appearance of demonic creatures. It was just awful. I should have just gone straight to the dorms. Instead, I got into this mess because I wanted to tour the old building. As I felt more relaxed, a flood of lies gushed out of my mouth. However, Dorothy's eyes, which seemingly held the universe within them, revealed a meaningful expression. It was as if she knew something I didn't. Is it just my imagination? Dorothy Hartnova, psychology. I still couldn't read her mind with psychology. So, I decided to give up on trying to read her thoughts. Yep, you've worked hard. Dorothy replied with a gentle smile and a soothing voice. There was a moment of silence. Senior. Yes, President. I ran quite a lot today, and my body doesn't want to move anymore. Could you help me get to the dorms? Nihihai. Leave it to your big sis. Dorothy replied as she innocently laughed and placed her hand on her chest again. In the first semester of my freshman year, I managed to prevent all the bad endings and survived. I was more relieved than happy. For a while, Dorothy and I decided to sit side by side and admire the Tree of Radiance. It wasn't something you saw every day, so we thought we might as well enjoy it while we still had the chance. At that moment, I was grateful that you, the one I love, was by my side. Magic Night of M. Raken. Act 3, Chapter 4, Thunderbird Subjugation. The Curtain Falls. Chapter 48. Thunderbird Subjugation. Interlude. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Thunderbird Subjugation. Interlude. It was when Isaac and the Thunderbird were engaged in a battle at Carly Hall. It's the Black Monster. As the Thunderbird subjugation party made their way to Carly Hall, they immediately recognized the adversary of the Thunderbird and the army of familiars. An entity that appeared whenever demons emerged. If there was a being powerful enough to cast ice magic on such a large scale, it could only be the Black Monster. Seal, who had participated in the subjugation party, narrowed her eyes. She suddenly thought of the silver-blue-haired man. Despite having a relatively small amount of mana, he possessed a mana perception that was incomparable to her own. Mana perception was proportional to the maximum amount of mana one had. Seal wondered how he could have such a frightening mana perception despite being so weak, but a possibility that came to her mind tried to resolve this contradiction. Could it be, what if the Black Monster was the silver-blue-haired man who had been groveling just a while ago? A terrifying battle had taken place in Carly Hall. Seal had always thought she was talented and strong, but she felt that if she had been caught in that battle, she would have faced an end that was more futile than that of a mayfly. This is referring to how mayflies only live for up to 24 hours. The end of an insect trampled by a passerby would have been more spectacular. Of course, this was just her suspicion. She might have mistakenly labeled an innocent person as a powerful being. Well, that would be ridiculous. Due to her disdain for running, Seal supported the rear of the subjugation party while walking up the hill. Eventually, her familiar, which she had secretly sent into the sky, flew back to her. Zabbit, a purple bat familiar with the lightning element, landed on her shoulder. It flapped its wings with a surprised look on its face. See it, Seal, you were right. It was him. The one who was with you earlier. Zabbit had urgently descended after it confirmed the situation just before the Thunderbird and Isaac had clashed. Although it had been swept up in the violent storm that followed their clash, it wasn't injured. Seal closed her eyes slightly as she looked at the fussing Zabbit. It was the moment when her suspicion turned into certainty. It was said that every year, extraordinarily powerful individuals would enroll into M. Raken Academy. It seemed that this year's freshmen were no exception. Furthermore, the fact that it was not Luz Eltania, but someone who couldn't even be compared to the powerful top seat. Only now did Seal realize it. After the situation had ended. Above the old M.Raken Academy. Boo, boo. A round, balloon-like creature was floating in the sky. Its arms and legs were submerged into its swollen body, and its grotesque, layered face was enough to disgust anyone. Its yellowish-brown skin had a pattern that was like cracks on a dry rice field. All that came out of its mouth was the foolish boo sound. From the end of semester evaluation to the Thunderbird subjugation. That powerless balloon demon watched all the scenes with its clairvoyance ability. The closed eyelids slowly rose. The cold, bloodshot eyes looked down at the ground. Heinkel the Hoarder. Although he was powerless right now, he was one of the worst calamities. He watched Isaac, who was admiring the Tree of Radiance, in silence. Boo, boo. Soon, Heinkel the Hoarder hit his tracks above the clouds. The Academy's staff had to go through all sorts of trouble after the appearance of a demon and the Thunderbird subjugation. It involved on-site investigations, uncovering the truth, investigating the victims, persuading investors who had a significant share in the Academy's finances, analyzing the causes of the incident, ways to improve security, etc. The Academy was putting all its manpower into it. This Thunderbird incident wasn't just significant, it was too significant. If it had gone wrong, it could have resulted in numerous casualties. Ultimately, when summer vacation arrived, the Imperial Knights who had heard the news about the M.Raken Academy would come. The situation would continue to escalate, and the Academy's staff would rack their brains to the point that it bled. Luz attended the Truth Investigation Committee as the owner of Thunderbird Gallia. However, since it was clear that the demons had forcibly summoned Thunderbird Gallia against Luz's will, there was no reason to punish the innocent girl. However, Thunderbird Gallia was an 8-star magic beast. If the nation-destroying magic beast caused havoc for any reason, the Academy couldn't leave it alone. They needed to ensure that the familiar was safe. The problem was that Luz was currently in a state of mana exhaustion, which made it difficult to even use the most basic of elemental spells, let alone summoning her familiar. No matter how much mana someone had, the speed at which mana recovered would drastically drop when mana was depleted. No, even the expression, drastically, was an understatement. It would take about a week for Luz's condition to return to normal. In the end, the Academy asked for Luz's understanding and decided to place her in quarantine until she recovered. They also assigned someone to supervise Luz. Is this the room of the clueless junior who made me suffer? Charles Hall, a luxurious dormitory reserved for only the top-ranking students of M.Raken Academy. Luz, dressed in a comfortable one-piece, sat on her bed with a blanket over her head. It was only after a lavender-haired woman in a witch's hat entered the room that a thick, fog-like threatening aura began to emanate from her. Supervisor, Dorothy Hartnova. She had an atmosphere of being aloof towards Luz's childish gaze. As a result, the atmosphere between Luz and Dorothy created a distinct contrast that clearly divided the room in half. After all, Dorothy was said to be a natural disaster. An existence that couldn't be bound by any law or rule. Luz's murderous gaze was nothing more than a passing ant to Dorothy. Dorothy covered her eyes with a handkerchief and wandered around Luz's room like an adventurer exploring an area that had yet to be discovered. Luz was annoyed by her behavior. But since she was in a state of mana exhaustion, she had no means to oppose Dorothy and just ground her teeth in silence. Nyahaha. This room perfectly reflects your personality. What's with the interior? There's not a single cute corner. BL.net, there's not even a single teddy bear. Are you poor? Do you want to borrow one of mine? Kya, what's this? It's a cursed doll used in black magic. Our junior has a shady hobby. Oh, can I try putting our junior's hair in it when I'm bored? That's fine, right? Get out if you came here to pick a fight. Luce, unable to bear it any longer, finally spoke up. They were the first words she had spoken in the 10 minutes since Dorothy arrived. She spoke her mind, regardless of whether the other person was her senior or the strongest powerhouse of the academy. But Dorothy, as if she knew it would happen, opened her crescent-shaped eyes and approached Luce with a mischievous smile. Dorothy sat on the edge of the bed and tilted her head at Luce. Luce intentionally avoided eye contact with Dorothy. Junior, you noticed something strange, right? You don't have to suppress that electric chicken anymore. Luce frowned. Then she finally made eye contact with Dorothy. Dorothy's pupils always shined like a universe embroidered with starlight. The star-shaped pupils were still there. They were as unreal as ever. She had made a contract with the star fairy, Stella. Her eyes were uniquely altered under the fairy's influence. Luce heard that story when she was with Isaac. At that time, Luce didn't care about the details of the conversation, she just enjoyed her time with Isaac and quietly listened. It was clear that this unpleasant senior was a strong individual. Luce didn't think it was strange for Dorothy to find out she had been pouring half of her total mana, which amounted to all of her lightning mana, at all times to suppress the Thunderbird. Luce only reacted to the fact that she no longer needed to suppress the Thunderbird. Luce, the master of Thunderbird Gallia, had clearly felt that he had been freed from the chains of various curses and returned to being a docile familiar. Now it was unknown what her own condition would be once her mana had recovered. However, one thing was certain. Luce would now be able to use her full power. If nothing else, it further cemented herself as the strongest first-year in the magic department. Gallia is free now. I know, the electric chicken is a good boy. Stop calling him an electric chicken. It makes Gallia feel insignificant. Luce's attitude was still cold. Nevertheless, aside from Isaac, Dorothy was the person who had talked to Luce the most. Luce had a tendency to ignore what people said in the first place. It was probably because she saw Dorothy's face often. Nihihai. Dorothy laughed innocently as she got off the bed and started heading towards the doorway. That's the end of this surveillance. Already. The academy said to watch me for 3 days, it's annoying. Dorothy's short and concise answer convinced Luce in an instant. So, Junior, you have to stay here quietly, okay? Dorothy flashed Luce a mischievous smile, opened the door and went out into the hallway. As Dorothy disappeared, the room fell silent. It was a dramatic shift in atmosphere. Finally, the nuisance was gone. Luce let out a deep sigh of relief. Plop. Luce laid down on the bed and quietly stared at the ceiling. Now that she was alone, many thoughts began to fill her mind again. Grung. He came to save her again. As expected, he was a man who had concealed his identity with a magic cloak of disguise, and it seemed that the disguise had been undone as his cloak was damaged while fighting the demons. At that time, her vision was so blurred that she couldn't make out his appearance properly. However, from the size of Grung's hand that had touched her body and the outline of his shoulders, Luce could only think of one man. Isaac. She wanted to hold Isaac's hand right away and compare it to the size and feel of Grung's hand from her memory. Of course, if she thought about it rationally, it was obvious that the two people couldn't be the same person. Let's assume that Isaac was a strong individual like Grung. Then how could one explain Isaac's mana capacity, magic skills, and the fact that he trained so diligently every day? But, ice element. Hand size. Shoulder outline. Luce, who could remember everything, wasn't one to rely on intuition. However, her intuition was screaming at her right now. I want to believe that Grung's true identity is Isaac. Maybe she had felt this way since the class placement evaluation. The intuition she had been continuously ignoring might have tried to persuade Luce all along that Isaac was Grung. Maybe that was why she felt so close to Isaac, she didn't know. Finally listening to her intuition, Luce quickly got off her bed and headed towards the doorway. She had been saved twice by that mysterious man. She couldn't help but be drawn to him. Whenever she thought of him, the sound of her heart fiercely resonated, piercing through the silence. Even for Luce, who had never built relationships or interacted with people, it wasn't that difficult to recognize the nature of this unfamiliar emotion that she was experiencing for the first time. Her chest was throbbing. She felt like she was going crazy. Only by finding out the identity of Grung could the turmoil inside her heart subside. Let's quickly find out if Isaac was Grung. It was time to resolve the conflict between reason and intuition, and calm the throbbing in her chest. Just as she was about to grab the doorknob. Carrara! Ouch! Her hand stung, and she quickly stepped back. A brief cluster of stars appeared and then faded into the doorknob. A small note that was barely stuck under the doorknob fell to the floor due to the shock from earlier. As she picked it up, a short sentence and a drawn figure with a witch's hat came into view. "Didn't I tell you not to go out? Get some rest. I'll bring you food." A shadow appeared in the corner of Luce's eyes. She clenched her fist and ruthlessly crumpled the note. Afterward, she tried to escape through the window, but it was to no avail. Luce's frustration grew even deeper. *****, status, name. Isaac L.V. Gender. Male year. First title. Freshman mana. 1800/1800, mana recovery speed, C, stamina, B. Strength, B. Intelligence, C+, willpower, A. Potential. Details. Combat skills, Elemental Series 1. Ice, Elemental Firepower, B. Elemental Efficiency, B. Elemental Synergy, B. Elemental Series 2, Locked, Own Skills, Active, 1, Ice Generation, B, /5, Black Ice, B. 2, Ice Curtain, B. 1, Cold Divergence, B+, 1, Basic Protection Magic, D+, 4, Frostfire, C+, 4, Ice Wall, C+, 5, Frost Explosion, C. 2, Snow Pellets, C, Passive, 7, Psychological Insight, 5, Demon Detection, 9, Ice Sovereign Skill Tree. Details. Unique Attributes, Hunter, Potential, Stat Points. 0. Growth Rate, Physical Training Efficiency, B+. 56 out of 100, up, Magic Training Efficiency, A. 71 out of 100, up, Learning Efficiency, B+. 51 out of 100, up. Elemental Resistance, Fire Resistance, D. 10 out of 100, up, Water Resistance, D+. 16 out of 100, up, Ice Resistance, C+. 34 out of 100, up, Lightning Resistance, B. 39 out of 100, up, Rock Resistance, D. 12 out of 100, up, Wind Resistance, C. 18 out of 100, up, Neutral Magic Resistance, D+. 18 out of 100, up. Versus Race Combat Power, versus Human Combat Power, E. 4 out of 100, up, versus Other Races Combat Power, E. 1 out of 100, up, versus Heavenly Beings Combat Power, E. 0 out of 100, up, versus Demon Combat Power, S. 100 out of 100, max, Familiar, Eden, LV, 50, Grade. Race. Magic Beast Elements. Rock Bond. Synchronization. Summoning Mana Consumption. Own skills. 4 days had passed since the end of the Thunderbird subjugation and Luce's quarantine. During this time, the Academy's staff gathered the students and explained in detail what had happened during the end-of-semester evaluation for the first years of the Magic Department. They announced a retest. However, bonus points would be rewarded to students who had already passed the end-of-semester evaluation or had a fel card before the incident took place. Naturally, those who had already passed the evaluation objected, but they reluctantly accepted the majority's opinion that it was a dangerous event that endangered the lives of the students. Well, that was the power of the majority. There was a retest in Magic Night of M.Reken. As well. It was something I had already anticipated. In any case, the first semester grades were determined by a combination of the scores from the exams and the performance evaluations taken so far. Because of this, it was a huge advantage to have bonus points while retaking the same exam. Of course, I was the one who received the most bonus points. However, due to my surrender during the dual performance evaluation, it was difficult to expect a good grade for the first semester. And intuitively, I felt that the ice buff, black ice, imbued with darkness mana did not go well with Ice Sovereign. In particular, it was difficult to use black ice on ice magic that was 7-star or higher. It felt like forcibly connecting in operating circuits that didn't mesh well. It was simply inefficiency. In other words, the cost-effectiveness of increasing the power of high-level magic wasn't worth it. Moreover, the mana consumption almost tripled. In other words, unless I was in a short battle, it would be best to use black ice sparingly. I invested 5 stat points in physical training efficiency, and 16 points in learning efficiency, with the 21 new stat points I acquired. My elemental resistance increased by 10 for each element, thanks to unlocking the achievement during the Thunderbird subjugation. The minimum requirement to reach Hilda's Frost Scythe was an ice element resistance of 60 or more. With the elemental bracelet, I could now surpass that threshold. This was largely due to the early appearance of Leafa the Elusive, who should have appeared in the second semester. I had planned to acquire it before the end of the first year, but the condition to obtain it was met before the second semester. In other words, I planned to obtain Hilda's Frost Scythe, the ultimate ice elemental weapon, during this vacation. Just by holding that legendary weapon, the power of ice magic would be enhanced. Luz Eltania, are you ready? In broad daylight, on the beach. The beach near M.Reken Academy was so beautiful that it could be called a closed tourist attraction. The fine white sand reflected the sunlight, and the view of the emerald sea swaying was dazzling. A female student was the only one dipping her feet in the water. Her rose-gold hair fluttered in the sea breeze. It was Luz Eltania. Under the watchful eyes of the academy's staff, Luz nodded her head at Professor Fernando's question. The academy had brought along high-ranking wizards and Dorothy Hartnova, who was considered one of the strongest within the academy. This was to ensure the safety of the 8-star familiar, Thunderbird Gallia. They needed to be prepared for any potential battles. Currently, Luz had recovered enough mana to summon the Thunderbird. The fact that she could summon an 8-star familiar in just 4 days after being in a state of mana exhaustion meant that her mana recovery speed was insanely fast. And I, hidden behind a tree near the beach, secretly watched the scene unfold. Luz stretched her left arm out towards the sea. Soon after, Professor Fernando instructed Luz to summon the Thunderbird Gallia. The seal on Luz's left wrist began to emit a purple light. Hush kaboom! In an instant, dark clouds covered the sky, and purple thunder fiercely roared. From the purple lightning mana cluster that began to waver in the air emerged the black Thunderbird. Thunderbird Gallia had revealed himself. Squawk. Thunderbird Gallia, LV. 175 race. Magic beast elements. Lightning danger. Psychology. He is relieved that Luz Eltania seems to be fine. Thunderbird Gallia landed on the shallow water of the sea and locked eyes with Luz. While everyone held their breath, Luz seemed to be the only one who showed anticipation. Gallia gently touched her cheek with the top of his large beak. Then, Luz tenderly embraced Gallia's head. Why, did you come back only now? Why? The normally blunt and cold Luz had her head down and sobbed. To Luz, Gallia was the only being who shared memories of their time in the candy house. Even though Hansel died and the witch of the candy house also died, Gallia had survived despite being cursed. So, one of Luce's dearest wishes was to restore Gallia to his original state. That wish was now fulfilled, right here at this moment. Gallia lowered his eyes. After years of being engulfed by his destructive instincts due to the evil dragon's curse, he must have felt extremely sorry for the burden he had placed on Luce. The academy staff silently watched Luce and the Thunderbirds' reunion. Luce tightly hugged Gallia for a while. Someday, she would become a high-ranking tower master, wielding great influence within the empire and making history. It was this moment, the realization of her dream to restore Gallia, that marked the beginning of that journey. On a dark night, at Doris Hall, the dormitory for lower-ranked students. I was drying my wet hair with a towel. I had just taken a shower after I finished my daily training. When I returned to my room, all sorts of idle thoughts that hadn't crossed my mind while training suddenly surfaced. Among them, the most prevalent thought was undoubtedly about Kaya. I wanted to convey my gratitude to her for using Tree of Radiance, even if indirectly. However, Kaya seemed to be deliberately avoiding me as of late. Well, it wasn't in a bad way. According to psychological insight, she was always happy to see me. She also blatantly blushed and looked embarrassed whenever she saw me. It seemed like she had developed personal feelings for me as a man. It's probably because Kaya and I had experienced various things together. I had a rough idea of when I dealt a fatal blow to Kaya's heart. It must have been when we went to the ant nest and during the end of semester evaluation. The day we went to defeat Garzia the hermit, we had to sleep together, which couldn't be helped. During the fierce battle at the end of semester evaluation, I handed Kaya the Armana wand from behind. I thought I had no choice since I was desperate at the time. It's true that I was careless with someone who had no immunity to men. I reflect on that. Of course, if a girl as pretty as Kaya became my girlfriend, I'd be so happy that I'd strip. Do a grand jeté. Grand jeté refers to a dance move in ballet where the dancer does a leap in the air and kicks both legs in opposite directions of each other, resulting in a sort of mid-air split, a 360-degree head spin, and then show off an aerial somersault while shouting, "Hoo!" at the top of my lungs. However, I was not in a situation where I could comfortably date someone. At least not until I defeated the evil god. Moreover, there were various tangled threads of problems with Kaya that needed to be resolved first. In the first place, I wasn't irresistibly attracted to Kaya. Deeply dwelling on it now would only interfere with my training. So, I would have to think about the Kaya issue later. With that in mind, I got dressed. Water generation, water element, 1, splash. Suddenly, I heard the sound of water pouring from the window. It wasn't a sudden downpour. Someone had poured the water. I walked over to the window and flung it wide open. Outside the dormitory, under the moonlit night, a female student with rose-gold hair and a tiny floating killer whale waved at me. I never thought that Luce would come to see me personally. Although it was summer, the night was still cool. I put on a thin coat and left the dormitory. On the roadside of M.Rken Academy's living quarters, a street composed of glowing lamps illuminated Luce, who was standing on a macadam.style street. She was wearing a one-piece dress with a cardigan. As soon as Luce saw me, she unsummoned Bello and stood in a somewhat humble posture. Her usual faint smile adorned her lips. Luce Eltania, LV. 150 race. Human elements. Water, lightning danger. Psychology. She is happy to see you. Luce Eltania's level had skyrocketed. The status window had recalibrated her power to be level 150. Now that Gallia had returned to his original state, she could fully preserve her inherent lightning mana. In other words, it would be more accurate to say that she had returned to her original level. Luce was naturally very strong. By the way, as a player leveled up, they received potential stats and took less damage from lower-level enemies. However, other characters' levels were simply based on their combat abilities. The criteria for determining levels itself were inherently different. It's been a while, Luce. Is your quarantine over? Luce nodded her head. What's going on? I missed you, Isaac. For a moment, I took a deep breath. Sometimes, the words Luce casually uttered dealt a fatal blow to my heart. It wasn't a statement made out of a desire to become lovers. Luce simply had a style of fully opening her heart as soon as it opened a little, so she was quite close to me. The only thing was that the barrier for entry was extremely high. Moreover, she had built walls in her relationship with others due to her troubled past. So, she had no grasp of how much psychological distance to maintain as a friend, where to draw the line, and what things you shouldn't say in a friendship. Therefore, I could understand and move past Luce's unconscious flirting. Are you okay? I heard you went through a lot. I was worried, but I couldn't visit you because you were in quarantine. Luce Eltania, Psychology. She is happy that you were worried about her. It seemed like I needed to be more careful with my words as well. I'm okay. Isaac, I want to ask for a favor. Can you listen? Luce, who always started with dull remarks, seriously asked me for a favor, which meant it was definitely an important request. Luce must have gone through many significant emotional changes recently. She had caused unintended harm to people due to the Thunderbird subjugation incident, and she had fulfilled her wish to return Dahlia to his normal state. She must have been in the process of sorting out her complicated feelings. It was like that in Magic Night of M. Riken. What favor? I was ready to help Luce with whatever she had to say. If I fulfill your request, I hope you can sort out your complicated emotions and, as usual, give me dull remarks and talk about trivial things. So, I will do my best to fulfill whatever request you have. With that in mind, I paid close attention to what Luce would say next. Can I hold your hand? Chirp chirp, the sound of insects was loud. The silence was due to me being at a loss for words. Luce subtly extended her right hand. As if she wanted me to quickly hold it. As I took in the sight of her slender and delicate hand, I couldn't even properly open my mouth. I looked back at Luce, who avoided my gaze with her head lowered. I want to hold hands with Isaac. On a summer night. Her voice, as soft as the moonlight etched in the sky, tickled the air. I was reminded of how truly beautiful Luce's voice was. At that moment, my rationality faltered, and I couldn't think of anything. All I could do was stare at Luce's outstretched hand for a long time. And there we stood, beneath the streetlight. Oh, so quietly, with our heads lowered. Footnotes. Chapter 49. Hand. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hand. The eastern region of Eltania County encompassed the stunning Alucar coast, which was considered one of the most beautiful places in all of the empire. If one sat on the rooftop of the Eltania family mansion, one could take in the entire view of Alucar coast, which sparkled like jewels in the sunlight. At night, one could admire the coastal scenery that shimmered like auroras. This was all thanks to the influx of blue bioluminescent plankton. However, when Luce was young, she didn't favor the beauty of the day nor the allure of the night, but the twilight that dwelled in between. When the edge of the setting sun gently kisses the horizon. Even the sun, which illuminates the world equally, seems to fade away so futilely. And moreover, what of my brother Hansel, or the witch of the candy house? Human life is truly fleeting. Luce's eyes were lifeless. The thought of whether she could truly open her heart to anyone ever again was too much for the young girl to bear. But if there ever came a day when she opened her heart to someone again. At that time, don't regret being unable to cherish that precious person more. Don't regret being unable to protect them. Luce used to mutter to herself as she gazed at the majestic light of the setting sun. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. I regained my composure. Luce Eltania, Psychology. She suspects that you are grung. Psychological insight. reveals a person's current mental state. The reason Luce asked to hold my hand was displayed in the status window. Only then did I learn the reason Luce had come all this way. When the Thunderbird subjugation was over, I had caught Luce and held her in a princess carry. At that time, my hand had touched her arms and legs. Luce was clearly intent on comparing Grung's hand to mine. Were you conscious then? At the time, I wasn't fully conscious and my vision was blurry, so I failed to notice. Luce wasn't unconscious. It was a moment when my 7 years of experience playing Magic Knight of M.Raken was for naught. The important thing was that I was still in the suspicious phase. It was evident that Luce had regained consciousness but wasn't able to clearly observe my appearance. I could tell by the way she eagerly tried to hold my hand to discern whether I was Grung or not. Moreover, it seemed that Gallia was doing an excellent job at keeping my secret like he said he would in Mid-Heaven Realm. It was a bit worrying, but luckily, that guy had some tact. Why do you want to hold my hand all of a sudden? Just, Luce, you should only hold hands with the person you like, not a friend of the opposite sex. I spoke in an old-fashioned tone to dissipate the subtle atmosphere that Luce had created. Did you know about Socrates' famous method of refutation? Socrates' famous method of refutation, also referred to as elenchus, was a method that Socrates himself developed to put someone's social skills to the test. He would use this dialectal method to reveal someone's social skills or lack thereof. When I usually pointed out something like this, Luce would argue with me by asking, why? For this reason, I usually refrained from pointing things out, but this time it couldn't be helped. I needed to adopt a conservative mindset to overcome this crisis. We've already held hands before. The moment I heard that line, I realized I didn't need to explain to Luce why male and female friends shouldn't hold hands. She seemed to know what it meant for a man and a woman to hold hands. Don't you have someone you like? I cut off Luce's words. I think I do. Luce Eltania, Psychology. She feels excited while thinking about Grung. It was over. Grung was confirmed to be on Luce's lover's route. Now, if it was revealed that I was Grung, I would be seriously screwed. Moreover, Luce's lover's route was activated on the condition that the player saved her during the class placement evaluation. I had perfectly nailed Luce's lover route on myself by saving her during the Thunderbird subjugation. Luce was the kind of character who would suffer a fatal blow to her heart if she was saved, even if it was just once. Since I had saved her twice now, once her crush's identity was revealed, her heart would race like a runaway train. But thanks to Luce sincerely revealing her true feelings, the situation was now in my favor. Is it me? It's not you, maybe. I deliberately continued talking as if I hadn't heard Luce whisper, maybe. If it's not me, then. Well, anyways, it's something to celebrate, but then why do you want to hold hands with me so badly? And what was that, just, about? I calmly pressed Luce. It was an inevitable situation. If the fact that I was Grung was revealed, extra bad ending number 13 would suddenly come crashing down like the Grim Reaper. I couldn't just end my friendship with Luce either. It was already too late for that. Let's try and think about it. If I hastily deny or try to overturn the fact that I'm not Grung, it would only arouse Luce's suspicion. Luce had a brain that could remember everything. In other words, if she saw any inconsistencies in my behavior, she would undoubtedly investigate, and I would inevitably be caught as Grung. So, what should I do? Avoidance would be best. The key was to keep Luce in a state of ambiguous doubt, wondering whether Isaac and Grung were the same person or not. As long as she didn't gain complete certainty, I could just prevent Luce's heart from firmly directing her feelings towards me. Slowly, very slowly. Let's gradually accumulate enough evidence through inductive reasoning to convince her that I wasn't Grung. At least until I defeated the evil god Nephid. In Magic Knight of M.Raken, if one followed Luce's lover's route and defeated the evil god Nephid, there was an ending scene where Luce and the protagonist would have a happy family life. putting the happy family life with Luce aside. The important thing was that by the time one defeated the evil god Nephid, the risk of facing extra bad ending number 13 would disappear. It isn't okay to play with the feelings of others. As I rubbed the back of my neck and spoke in a disappointed tone, Luce raised her head and showed a troubled expression. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. There was a faint whimper in Luce's voice. Luce Eltania, psychology. She is worried about being hated by you. I felt guilty. I'm sorry for pushing you away, but my situation isn't easy. No, I was too harsh. I'm sorry. But since we're already here, let's stay a little longer and chat by the lake over there. I thought I had successfully changed the subject. I also quickly came up with a plan to distract Luce with various stories. So, as I was about to move my feet and gradually execute that plan, the moment I turned around and started to move my feet, I felt a weight in my right hand. The smooth touch of her skin ran through my fingers. Surprised, I stopped and looked back. Luce was holding my hand. I didn't plan on asking for permission. I just thought that it would be better to hold your hand, even if it meant being hated a little. Luce said so in a lonely tone and dug her delicate and slender fingers into the spaces between my fingers. You have calluses. A rough, thickened area of skin that appears because of repeated irritation or pressure to an area of skin. The air grew heavy. Luce raised her head. Only the sound of insects was loud. The light from the street composed of glowing lamps engulfed the moonlight and brightly shined upon us. Under that bright light, Luce looked at me, her eyes shadowed by her bangs, and asked. You are Grung, right? Extra bad ending number 13 bird cage. That ending occurred when Luce's affection gauge for the protagonist broke a certain threshold. Luce, unable to control her emotions, confined the protagonist after she kidnapped him and took care of him with utmost devotion. She fed him every day, washed him, embraced him, and showered him with kisses. She whispered her hidden feelings in a tender voice. I love you. I like you. I love you, I really love you. As time flowed relentlessly within Luce's love, the evil god Nephid was resurrected, bringing about the destruction of the world. I was someone who had saved Luce twice despite knowing about her hidden and dark tendencies. With that in mind, I had to do whatever it took to avoid being caught as the true identity of Grung. My relationship with Luce was one of friendship. Even if there were slightly strange vibes due to Luce's unfamiliarity with boundaries, it was just right for us to be able to say with certainty, we're friends. What's that? I asked, are you Grung? How do you do that? I immediately went into acting mode and played dumb. During my school days, I had aspired to be an actor and had tried a wide range of plays. I took pride in my acting skills and considered them to be top-notch. Luce seemed puzzled by my expression, as if she didn't understand why I didn't know anything. The Black Monster. You already know what I'm talking about. That. Why do you call that, Grung? Because he told me so. Are you really not Grung? Idiot. Luce was taken aback, and shook her head. It seemed that the expression, idiot, which she had never heard before, had provoked her. How can I be that monster? Would I be struggling every day if I was? I was just Isaac, who trained hard every day. She wouldn't be oblivious to this fact. Is it just my imagination that I feel a bit sad? Luce stared at me with a meaningful gaze. However, there was no way she could find even a trace of imperfection in my acting. My facial expressions and gestures were all perfect. I see, sorry for the misunderstanding. Luce lowered her eyes. It seemed like she had conceded. I wasn't sure how accurately she had felt the touch of my hand during the Thunderbird subjugation. But judging from the fact that she couldn't be sure I was Grung even after reacting to the calluses, it was safe to say that she didn't feel a distinct touch. Besides, there was no need to seriously convince her, I just needed to remind her of the difference in mana and skill between Grung and me. Luce would also consider that judgment to be reasonable. She wasn't an idiot who would jump to the conclusion that I had reached the realm of an arch-wizard. However, this alone wasn't enough to completely dispel her suspicion. Luce had developed feelings for Grung, so doubts lingered like embers of a flame. At the slightest clue, her suspicion would flare up fiercely once again. I could never let my guard down. But it's quite novel to like such a monster. I wonder if I should say that's just like you, Luce. I'm curious about what happened. Why don't you tell me about it from over there, Isaac? Luce said while suddenly interrupting me. Yes. What now? For some reason, Luce looked like a shy girl, blushing and hanging her head. As I watched her fidget with her fingers, I had an ominous feeling. Keep calm. There was no difference from before. No matter what challenges I had to face, I would calmly overcome them. Soon, Luce's oceanic eyes looked straight into mine. Could you, by any chance, teach me how to be in a relationship? This seems like it will be quite a tough battle. Footnotes. Chapter 50. Summer Vacation Ceremony. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Summer Vacation Ceremony. We shall now proceed with the Summer Vacation Ceremony for the first-year students of the Magic Department. The end of semester retest consisted of several elemental magic tests. It was very small compared to the traditional end of semester evaluation scale, but it was also the most intuitive. Thus, the first semester came to a close. The total grade for the first semester was the sum of all grades from the exams and performance evaluations taken thus far. I was ranked 230th out of 300 students. Well, it was expected. I had received very low scores for my grade E mana at the start of the semester, and I had no choice but to surrender during the duel. But I still had my sights set on being the top seat. Grades were an important indicator of how much stronger I had become, after all. Under the blue sky, large groups of fluffy clouds leisurely drifted across the scenery. Amidst the chirping of birds, the first-year students of the Magic Department belatedly held their summer vacation ceremony. In the square, students were seated in chairs that were neatly arranged beforehand. Headmistress Elena, a beautiful woman in her 70s who retained the appearance of her 20s due to the effects of her passive immortality, gave a speech. As the top seat of the first semester of the first year, Luce Eltania came forward as the student representative and read the declaration. While doing so, she discreetly glanced my way and let out a gentle smile whenever she had a chance. However, the male students around me blushed as if they had seen something pleasant, and sent envious and jealous gazes my way. I had grown used to it by now. What to do? My worries surfaced again, all because of a recent dilemma I had taken on. I asked her how she found out about Grung, and after listening to the story I already knew, I gave her some cliched relationship advice. I was sweating internally, trying my best to hide the fact that I was Grung. Well, Luce's story aside, I had a lot of things to do over the break. BDNV. Magic Knight of M. Raken was a widely recognized God-tier game. Due to its vast content and story, as well as the various interactions between objects and huge open-world map that felt like one big world, it had been loved by many users for a long time. Once I go outside, there'll be plenty of content. During the break, I heard from Amy that Ian Fairytale planned to enjoy content like the guild quests outside the academy. The evil god wouldn't be able to track Ian after he leaves the academy. That was why the demons couldn't be informed about the Child of Light's whereabouts. Other light element wielders like the Saintess weren't attacked by demons for similar reasons. In the first place, an astronomical amount of mana was consumed to send it into the abyss and awaken the demons one by one. The evil god must be struggling with that one task alone. So, I hope Ian enjoys his summer vacation to the fullest. I'll just go look for Hilda's frost scythe. Thanks to obtaining the elemental bracelet, my plans were pushed forward. I could now search for the ultimate ice elemental weapon, Hilda's frost scythe. If things went well, I might be able to get my hands on my second ultimate elemental weapon before I even became a second-year student. Awesome. I could already feel the pressure from the intense, floating island scenario easing. The floating island scenario was a chapter that caused many users to feel regret because of Dorothy's death. Although she was already cursed to die within a year, she ended up dying even sooner because the demons had accelerated her curse. It was a very heartbreaking chapter for me, as Dorothy was my favorite character. I won't let Dorothy die. Of course, Dorothy would also be a great help in preventing bad endings in the future. In the first place, Dorothy was my favorite character. That reason alone was enough to save her. Achieving my goals through gritted teeth and sheer determination was my specialty, after all. Whether it was the floating island chapter or anything else, I would definitely save my favorite character. In order to do that, I would have to train hard during this break. On the way back from the end of semester ceremony, most students were busily preparing to return to their hometowns right away. Since the first-year students of the magic department had their break delayed by 9 days, they must have been feeling impatient and discontent. Come to think of it, there won't be many students around during the break. I can have the training ground all to myself. Hell yeah. Quite a few students would be leaving tomorrow, so I had to do my training as usual today. Starting tomorrow, it would be better to go to the training ground. Was it because I had just finished a hectic semester and was now welcoming the break? I suddenly felt a sense of unfamiliarity. I stopped and looked down at my right hand. The now familiar hand shape entered my sight. Isaac. I had taken over this weak man with silver-blue hair, red eyes, and an otaku-like appearance. I didn't know where Isaac's hometown was, who his family was, or what kind of upbringing he had. Is it proper etiquette to somehow find out Isaac's personal information and visit his family at least once? Now that I think about it, as I thought about it, a question surfaced in my mind. Isaac, why did you enroll here? I knew why Ian had enrolled at M.Raken Academy. It was to graduate from the best academy and become a prestigious magic knight. Ian's E.rank mana was due to an upbringing that couldn't properly awaken his talents. Nevertheless, he had thoroughly honed his swordsmanship skills in order to become a knight. But what about Isaac, who also had E.rank mana? If becoming a wizard was his goal, why did he only focus on academics instead of magic training? At the beginning of the first semester, during the mana evaluation, Professor Fernando said that Isaac had received excellent grades in the theoretical field. But why? Overcoming E.rank mana wasn't that difficult. Even if he had no talent, he would have somehow surpassed the E rank if he had diligently trained his magic. Was he really aiming to be just a scholar? If so, wasn't the distribution of effort too extreme? Isaac must have passed the Academy's entrance exam with only theoretical skills. It felt like he deliberately focused on the part he could do best. It was as if he hadn't come to M.Raken Academy to become a successful wizard, but had some reason to enter M.Raken Academy. There was a strange possibility. In Magic Knight of M.Raken, Isaac was an undeniable extra. In other words, it's not because he was a hidden mastermind or an important figure who could influence the scenario. Something seems to be on the tip of my tongue. Ah! Suddenly, a silver-haired female student came to mind. One of the NPCs with no story importance, she was a character with a mental disorder that seemed a bit sociopathic. It somehow felt like Isaac was related to that NPC. However, the silver-haired girl was just one of the passing NPCs, so I could not clearly recall the dialogue. Was it just my imagination? I didn't know. I could be overthinking it because I'm feeling sensitive. While mulling over my thoughts, I headed to the butterfly garden. Sir Isaac. On the deserted garden path, a sudden gust of green wind brushed past my skin. Along with a familiar voice, a female student wrapped in wind magic landed in front of me. Her light green twin tails fluttered in the wind. Ranked second in total points for the first semester, the second seat, Kaya Astrian. Kaya Astrian, LV. Race. Human elements. Wind, ice, plant danger. Psychology. She is happy to see your face. Kaya. I hadn't expected her to suddenly come to me because she had recently been avoiding me. She had acquired the plant element. Well, that was only natural. Now that I thought about it, she didn't even ask me about the Armana wand. I had already prepared an answer to that. I came to say thank you. She was so nervous that her voice trembled like an earthquake. Because of the wand. Yes, yes. Although it was quite late, I never expected to receive any gratitude. If anything, I should be the one thanking her. Don't worry about it. It was something you needed, so I gave it to you. Do you care about me? I didn't bother to answer. It was true that I cared. Kaya blushed, taking my silence as a positive response. Actually, I'll be returning to my family soon. So, I won't be able to see you during the break, and I came to say goodbye. How did you find me? Well, I saw you while I was flying in the sky. Kaya was dressed in elegant brown clothes. She must have wanted to meet me before leaving the academy. So, what I wanted to say is. Kaya Astrian, psychology. She is in trouble because her mind has gone blank. In short, she came to see my face and express her gratitude before leaving. I was delighted. I was genuinely grateful to Kaya. Because of you, I'm here now. So, what I was trying to say. Kaya stared at my face with wide open eyes. Here, in the corner of the butterfly garden, the street was lined with mahogany. Befitting its name, the flower beds scattered around and the butterflies dancing in the garden were quite refreshing. Kaya's ladylike demeanor blended well with the scenery. She looked lovely. The corners of my mouth unconsciously rose. She was the person I owed the most in the first semester, the one who saved my life with the tree of radiance, after all. Eventually, I realized that my expression was the first genuine smile I had ever shown Kaya. I suddenly noticed that I hadn't smiled at her much. Have a great break, Kaya. I approached Kaya and patted her shoulder. As I was about to head to my usual training spot in the corner of the butterfly garden. Shoo! An unexpected attack hit me. Something soft touched my right cheek for a moment, making a cute sound as it passed by. Startled, I tried to maintain my composure and looked to the side. Kaya was trembling, her face turning an even deeper shade of red. Her complexion had completely changed. Steam was rising endlessly above her head, her eyes spinning round and round. It seemed she had belatedly realized what she had done while failing to suppress her instincts. I've committed a grave sin. Da. Kaya ran away as fast as she could. It was a sprint in high heels. She wrapped wind magic around her feet and fiercely cut through the air. Her figure somewhat resembled a bullet. For a while, I stood still, gazing at the spot Kaya had left while touching the cheek she kissed. I didn't expect the shy girl to be so bold. I must have been, really surprised. Inside the luxurious carriage of the Karndas family that was departing from the academy. Lady Seal, is there something bothering you? The carriage was crossing the Great Bridge and passing near the Kalas mountain range. Emma, the armored-clad exclusive escort knight of the Karndas family, asked Seal with a doubtful expression. They were riding in the same carriage. Seal would usually have been napping at this time of day. However, for some reason, she was lost in deep thought, propping her chin on her hand and staring intently out of the window. What had she experienced at the academy? A Seal who didn't nap was no different from an unknown person to Emma. Seal replied in her usual weak voice. I'm just realizing how vast the world is. Emma couldn't understand Seal's response. She wasn't usually fond of the concept of appreciation. Had the academy life full of youth and the scent of flowers changed Seal? Or, had she become so deeply troubled that even her nap time had been affected? Feeling an unnecessary tension, Emma repeatedly swallowed her dry saliva. Seal's mind was on Isaac. The boy with silver-blue hair had deceived Seal about his mana capacity and pretended to be weak. However, wizards were not existences that could act weak just because they wanted to. Because of mana perception, one could sense the wizard's mana circuit and roughly estimate their amount of mana when they use magic. That was why Seal quickly realized that Isaac was weak. However, during the final exam, he pinpointed the locations of fell cards. He demonstrated an enormous mana perception ability that didn't match his mana capacity. It was truly a contradiction. But during the Thunderbird subjugation, the contradiction was resolved when Isaac was revealed as a powerful being. And the fact that such a powerful being could hide their mana meant that they had reached the realm of an arch-wizard at such a young age, an unbelievable conclusion. Historically, there has never been such a prodigy. In other words, if it became known that a person of Seal's age like Isaac had reached the realm of an arch-wizard, the world would be turned upside down. Putting aside the royal family, the world itself would have its eyes on Isaac. Everything in the world would compete to win his heart. But that guy is hiding his identity. It had been concluded that the black monster that caused a stir at the academy was a demon who had betrayed its own kind. It was because he appeared at the right time and place whenever a demon appeared. And because he used ice magic wrapped in darkness mana, which only demons could use. In the first place, he didn't even look human from the outside. As such, Seal had no objections to the idea that the black monster was a unique type of demon. However, after learning that Isaac was the monster, she could finally think of the possibility of a magic cloak of disguise. The enemy of an enemy is a friend, as they say. Even so, the academy side was not letting their guard down against the black monster. Before all of that, why did Isaac hide his mana? Although she didn't know the reason, it was certain that Isaac was secretly struggling to protect the people of the academy. In that case, it would be much better to work with the academy side to stop the demons. But for some reason, Isaac wasn't doing that. Is it because of an informant? During the dueling evaluation, Professor Fernando found out from the demons that there was an informant within the academy. It was a fact that could be learned by looking at the investigation records posted by the Truth Investigation Committee on the Orphan Hall Bulletin Board. In other words, that informant was involved in the academy's administration. If Isaac was in a position where he would be in trouble if he got caught by that person, the situation before and after fit like puzzle pieces. Behind the scenes, unknown to the academy students, including Seal, a dangerous confrontation between Isaac and the informant was unfolding. Seal didn't want to get involved in such a complicated and dangerous situation. However, the M.Riken Academy diploma was necessary for her to live comfortably, so dropping out wasn't even an option. Other students must have had similar thoughts. Then, I should have that Class D guy protect me. But I shouldn't carelessly provoke him. As a result, all incidents were resolved by protecting the secret that Isaac is actually strong. And according to the information received from the Karndas family's informant. Now that the Imperial Knights were getting involved in M.Riken Academy, if the informant was revealed at this time, will my academy life be worry-free? An informant siding with the demons and causing harm to people. Isaac, who was defeating demons and protecting people. It was clear without a doubt which side to take.